He said it was basically like it's kind of like the Mexican army and like cartels, but it's actually what the video was there was two different like factions of organized crime, and they were kind of going after each other. And he said what he said was funny about it was that they were heading the direction towards the river, so they were trying to get away from somebody. They weren't going to get too much further at that point. So he said, I'm not really sure how it ended. He was going to give me some updates, but I haven't had any. But it was basically just two like rival gangs fighting.
Okay, and is that relatively common? I'm not sure if anyone has more experience on this.
He said it's happened 3 times at that bridge.
3 times in general, or three in total, or 3 times in recent?
Yeah, total.
Okay, so it's not that common.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's got an update on that. The other thing I would like to do is say, man, Ian, good to have you. I'm glad you didn't come to the last space because I think it would have just
Okay.
gone crazy at everyone. It was pretty heated. But
What was at the last space?
we talked about the Biden. Did you see the Biden press conference, the one related to the Biden
No, I
family?
wasn't really paying attention to
Uh,
it. I wasn't really paying attention
All
to
right,
it.
so Simon, maybe you can give us a quick overview on what, because I know you did a thread on it. What were the key takeaways from that press conference? You did say in the space earlier that it's important, yet it didn't add much that we didn't know. It just started adding more evidence. Is that correct?
Oh no, no, they added more stuff, more content, more information. But in terms of the like
Not
aspect
more,
of
yeah, exactly. Not more allegations, but more context and more evidence based on
yeah,
the existing
even more
allegations.
allegation for the same stuff. So, like for example, Biden, we know Biden was in cahoots with like China and Ukraine, but also we got that he was basically in Romania, and 17 out of the 18 payments that were made while he was vice P. Was a 16 out of 17. So, sorry, what the Biden family made. I mean, as much as people want to belag this and make it look like it's not about Biden, like if every single member of his whole dynasty is getting money, like come on, what's going on, bro? Like I get it, you gotta belag it, but
And what was your
it's
As
like not
corrupt
even
as
the
the Devil
children, it's like
people.
even the grandchildren will get involved. Come on.
and what was your conclusion after listening to the space and the debate?
My conclusion is the guy's bent, he's been getting money, and it's just about whether they can find it or not, and they can.
The interesting thing, guys, is that they're setting up the entire family down to the grandchildren to take money. It's like Walter White with the A1A car wash in Breaking Bad. They're finding a way to launder this money every way, even through grandchildren, and it's all starting to come out.
I mean, the question's going to be really for me: are they going to be able to link it to Biden? Because that's going to be
Joe
that's
Biden.
going to be
Was there anything to indicate that it is linked to Joe Biden? Because from what I've seen, that was one of the
nothing,
main arguments made. That wasn't anything
nothing
linking to Joe Biden.
direct, like
Not a
nothing direct.
thing.
Well, actually, it doesn't matter if they can link it to Biden because the damage to the U.S. has already been made, according to me. Because what has happened in the U.S. The last 6 months, with all the the Trump, and now we have Biden. What the world sees is that the U.S. has corrupt leaders. So regardless if they can connect it to Biden, it clearly shows why we had all of these shell companies. It's very clear why.
Yeah,
And
it
and
shows that
so
Hunter did. It doesn't show that Joe did. So I think that's important. I mean, if
Yeah,
there's
I
a
think
link
if
showing,
yeah, sorry, bro, I'll let you finish. But like the thing I want to say, Visar, is that both are bad. But if there's a direct,
The smartest person I know, according to Joe
thank you,
Biden.
Ian, thank you, I appreciate it. But what I want to say, Visar, is if they link it directly to Joe, and listen to me because Ian just called me the smartest person he knows. If they link it directly with Joe Biden and Joe Biden was directly
sorry,
involved,
Aryan.
that's significantly more serious corruption than Hunter Biden leveraging the Biden name. Both are bad,
Yeah,
but one
Definitely.
is, in my opinion, significantly more serious.
yeah. One would
Yeah,
be
definitely.
questionably legal. You know, like if he's just leveraging his name and selling his services as a consultant or a lawyer based on his name, you can't really say that's illegal unless there's something being given back by government. And I haven't seen anything like that yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I think
Yeah,
it's important that we.
yeah, but Brian, what I mean is not if it can be shown if it was legal, not legal. It's not that important because many things that let's say Putin does, you cannot show it that he's doing something illegal with many stuff he does, but the world knows that he is a crook. And
Well, yeah,
what I'm
but
meaning is
go ahead.
hold on. What I'm meaning is that the picture that the U.S. leaders have shown the last years is that U.S. leaders are not that much better than, let's say, Putin
I'd
in
argue
terms
with that.
of.
Like
Yeah, yeah, but you understand what I mean.
you're saying that
The
we're,
difference from
sorry.
how US have been portrayed, the leaders, it's starting to get more or less the same level as, let's say, leaders of the Balkans.
I mean,
Everybody
real
knows that they are
question,
crooks,
Brian.
but
I mean, would like real question, like legitimate. This isn't like a trap or anything. Like, would we ever have a scenario where Putin, I don't know, family members are receiving money to essentially impact policy in Russia?
No, I think that if you can show that it was impacting policy in the United States, that's one thing. That would be a major crime, and that would be
No, but
that
in
would be
Russia,
horrible.
like, would we have that? We would never have that, would we?
Would we have
Wouldn't have what?
evidence that? Yeah, I'm confused.
Can
Right.
you ask
So
your
would
question, please?
yeah. So actually, let me.
Are you so you're suggesting that in Russia there would never be a scenario where a member of the Putin family would receive money for
No,
policy?
no ways, your question. No ways.
No. So I'm asking the question that would you have that scenario where Putin directs his policy solely based on his family members receiving money? Of course, he'd be receiving money for various things, but would he rechange his policy just to receive financial wealth from a foreign country?
I mean, I would argue that he does that all the time. I mean, I think
Based
he's
on what would you argue that?
Um,
Based on what?
based on what he's known to be a corrupt
Do you know
leader.
anything about Russian politics and how they pass
this is what
legislation?
I mean, Brian.
I
This
think
is what
no,
I
no.
mean.
Listen, I think if you ask U.S. intelligence whether he is pocketing money based off his policies and if his family's getting wealthy off his policies, I think the answer would be a resounding yes. You're right.
Based on
Ian.
what?
This
Based on
is-
what? Your biases?
this-
No,
I mean,
based on
like,
U.S.
you
intelligence.
don't understand how
Based on US
laws are passed
intelligence.
in Russia?
Well, I'm sorry.
They
This
have
is
a
what
two-
I mean.
All right, so let me. Okay, I don't know what you meant, but let me read out. So the Panama Papers in
Remember what
2016,
I
the
meant,
release of in 2016. I'm reading it as I see it, so I haven't read this. Could contradict whoever's point. In 2016, the release of the Panama Papers revealed a network of. Before I read this, just so you know, the audience, we do have the Trump town hall starting in an hour and 15 minutes. We'll be discussing Trump very shortly. In a few minutes, we'll be discussing what we're expecting that town hall. And then we'll be streaming it and discussing it live on stage. Sliman, you'll tell us why this is such a big event and why you're pretty excited for it. But let me read out what I just found now, and Ian will probably butt in for this one. In 2016, the release of the Panama Papers revealed a network of offshore accounts and shell companies linked to Putin's inner circle, including his childhood friend Sergei Roldugin. The document suggested that Roldugin may have acted as a frontman for Putin's personal financial interests. Russian oil and gas industry. Putin has been accused of using his power to benefit his personal financial interests in Russia's oil and gas industry. In particular, he has been linked to the state-owned oil company Rosneft and its CEO Igor Sechin, who is widely seen as a close ally of Putin. Sechin has been accused of using Rosneft to enrich himself and Putin's inner circle. Last one is personal wealth. Putin's personal wealth is difficult to estimate, but some estimates place it into the billions of dollars. While it's not clear how much of this wealth is directly linked to his position as president, some have speculated that obviously so there's no direct
it's all
evidence.
speculation.
Yeah, and
So-
what I wanted to add, so that's just some things I read now. What I would add to it, I don't expect there to be anything other than speculation, because I don't expect there to be much getting leaked from the Kremlin.
But even the speculation, Mario, none of it is like. I'm not denying that any of these guys will be getting cuts for certain things and making sure their wealth, like that'll definitely be happening. I'm not even saying that's not happening. Like they're definitely all getting wealthy.
Yeah,
But
but
the
your
difference
point,
Yeah.
making
you got it.
policy based on personal gain, I think
I mean, come on, if
it's
you're
different
right,
levels.
it's China, they're paying you, you're the vice president, like, come on.
What?
It's China. So, for example, one of the countries that the payment was received from was China. China is United States' #1 rival. That money went to, let's not say Biden directly, but went to his children, his grandchildren,
So
basically
from
every single
who-
member
yeah,
of his
who-
generation.
But you have every single, well, not every single, 99% of every Fortune 500 company is making money from China. It's not abnormal.
I'm making money from China, bro. One of my
Yeah,
companies
me
is
too.
from
Me
China.
too.
I import products
As
from
much as I
China.
put you down, I mean, the difference is,
You don't know much. You don't know much. Let me teach you business
You got
101.
skills. No, but
There's
you
no
got skills.
business. You cannot run an e-commerce business without China. So China
Also-
manufactures
also,
products,
this
so
is
they
fully-
have
this
they
is
have
fully
things called
argument.
factories.
Mario, what was
I'm just
topical?
messing
What
with you.
was-
Let me ask you a question.
No,
No
no,
joke.
so
I'm just
serious
joking.
question.
Let me ask you.
No,
Let me
no,
ask you a question. I'll ask you a question. I want to
What
understand.
was
I was
Hunter
just
doing?
joking.
My question to you, what was Hunter doing then? What was this e-commerce?
I don't know, because I'm just joking. So I'm telling you, you're countering a joke. My serious question to you is, who paid him the money? Because I haven't looked into it as much as you have, so I'm genuinely curious. And this is concerning. Like, if there's money coming in from the CCP to Biden's son, definitely a point of concern. Obviously, Brian, you'll jump in and say there's nothing
It's
illegal.
the Bank of China. It's the Bank of
And
China.
what do we know about the money? Why did the Bank of China give money to Biden's son? Do we know?
Supposedly to give it to Hunter to provide them with legal services because they were supposed to be like a go-between with American investment companies. It doesn't make a lot of sense because he is not an expert on energy policy. He's not an expert on law. That's why it's extremely fishy that he would get this deal at all. His company, right? Seneca.
No, hold on, Ian. Not an expert in law. The guy's a graduate of Yale Law School. I think that would qualify.
Yeah, but he was fucking high the whole time. I mean, you get that.
Yeah,
like,
but
Yeah, but
even if
Ian,
he wasn't
functioning.
president, right?
Ian, I just want to.
Being high doesn't mean he's not an expert. It just means he's
Okay,
high.
sure, yeah. You want to mince
No.
words, that's fine. But he's rubber stamping his stuff, right? He's not in charge. He doesn't know what's going on. He's fucking high, fucking hookers the whole time. And you're telling me that they hired this guy for what reason exactly? Because they wanted his expertise. I mean, that
Benjamin.
doesn't make
Yeah,
any
but
sense.
Ian, I just want to. I mean, listen, I agree with you, Ian. But I mean, I think any lawyer will tell you there are a lot of lawyers that get high and a lot of lawyers that have sex with hookers, right? That's
Sure,
just.
but none of them, their names are not Hunter goddamn Biden.
No. This had nothing.
I think that's
Ian,
the
Ian,
issue.
he didn't refer to Biden. He said you made the particular argument. Why would they hire him if he's hiring these fucking hookers? Which I don't know how
mean,
fucking.
Like, if it was a
I don't.
regular
Hold
lawyer,
on.
I would get it.
I
would
wouldn't-
understand,
I would-
but
Ian,
like we're talking
Ian.
Hunter
Hey,
Biden,
hey,
it's our
hey, hey.
I would-
benefit.
I wouldn't.
Let me
We've got.
let
Hold
me-
on. Where's Fiji? We have the perfect
let
example.
me chime
Like,
in
are we
for a
like
second.
pretending that Hunter Biden is not an important person that he?
No, so
I
I'm
mean,
just
I
saying.
agree with you. I mean,
president's son.
listen, clearly, I mean, if you have a lineup of people with great credentials, right, Ian, you just happen to pick Hunter Biden. That's not by
Now,
coincidence.
keep in mind,
Obviously, I
I'm
agree with you.
not saying Biden, even took any of the corruption. I think that the Chinese, right, they gave money to Hunter, thinking that they would get access to the government. I don't know if they necessarily got it. There's no evidence that they did,
I think that's
right?
fair.
So is that-
agree.
what you
Wait, so
So just to say, I
Right,
think
so-
you're both right, Benjamin. I'll let you answer, but you're just both making sense. Like Benjamin, you're saying that him fucking hookers, and let me finish, Ian. Him fucking hookers and him taking drugs is not enough reason not to hire him. Doesn't make it completely incompetent. And then Ian, you're arguing that yes, but the fact that he has Biden in his last name, I'm sure played a key
Yep.
role in him getting hired. And then Brian will
That's a
probably.
big deal,
And
yeah.
then
Well,
guys,
if I can respond,
you will
Traveling
both, okay,
influence.
guys. So just let me finish off, and then Ben, you'll respond. Ian, you can add on to it. Brian, you'll probably jump in here because you did earlier and say yes, but just because he has Biden in his name does not make it illegal. If someone has Trump or Biden or whatever in their name, ethical or not, it's not illegal for them to be hired just based on that class. And I agree with you that this happens all the time. I've seen it happen around me in business the whole time. People that have a nice, cool last name, they get hired, or they can charge that premium because they have that last name with those relationships. But then the God linked to Sulaiman's point saying yes, but this is actually a big concern that to have the CCP and the is it the Central Bank of China or some Chinese bank pay money, and I'm guessing it's large amounts of money, to the son of the president shows serious conflicts of interest. And then link it to the final point, because I'm going to link it to what was said earlier in the space, and I want to slowly move to Trump in the next 5 minutes. Link it to the final point that yes, but this doesn't mean things like, so I remember talking about Biden's comments on Taiwan, etc. Such amounts of money and these things will not, I don't think they might impact policy in small bits and pieces. There might be a small loophole in a regulation that none of us will be able to spot that benefits some bank that someone will eventually spot. That one makes more logical sense. But general policy, if China invades Taiwan, I'm sure the Bidens will not say, yeah, take Taiwan just because thanks for paying us that $10 million. I think this is, it's a step too
In
far.
fact, he
But I'm
said the opposite.
He said, yeah, but Andrew, on that point as well, I'm contradicting all points pretty much, but on that point, I'll kind of add on to it. Last thing is also it's like, yeah, but Biden said we will protect Taiwan. Again, that does not show policy. That's just rhetoric. If there is any impact on policy, which I wouldn't be surprised, I think it would be something in the fine print in one of the bills passed that might benefit some financial institution. That for me seems like the most plausible, the most possible explanation, which is not right, but that's like, to me, that makes the most logic. Ben, you were going to add to it?
Yeah, just very quickly. So I agree with Ian, right? I mean, clear. There are many people with phenomenal law degrees, phenomenal experience, commerce, finance. I mean, it's not just coincidence that they have to pick Hunter Biden. My question is this: so, is there any actual tangible documentation that was provided today? Because I watched bits and pieces of the presser that we have, right? Aside from just theories and statements, right? Is there anything that's been released that's concrete? Number one, and number two is, when was this information uncovered? Like, was this information in possession of the Trump White House, for example? Like, when did all this allegedly take place?
So first of all,
I
there
was-
is
I-
direct proof. There is direct information. There's nothing directly linked to Biden. Just every single person of his dynasty, as I said. And in terms of the way it's been framed, it's not basically an issue of nepotism. Like, this is a scenario where they received, for example, Rob Walker for the Biden received $3 million through State Energy HK Limited, and that State Energy HK Limited is linked to the CCP. We know there was.
So is this?
We know there was
go ahead, sorry.
significant change. Oh, not significant. We know there were some changes in the policy. I mean, some of the things that were mentioned earlier in the space were reduction in tariffs and so on and so forth. So there was policy changes. What the depth and breadth of that is, that someone needs to look into that, investigate. So yeah, all of this is highly problematic.
Now, is this the last question? Is this the same situation in which Jamie Comer was talking about with Pamela Brown about a week and a half ago on CNN, when she directly asked him, do you have any evidence that suggests that the president, either the president or the vice, when he was time as vice president, committed any crimes? And his answer was, well, we found a lot of things that should be illegal. Is this the same investigation, or is this another one?
Look, they're doing the investigation right now. So just think about it. In March, about 4 weeks ago, I think it was in March, they released the previous House Oversight Committee document, which showed his connection to China, Ukraine. Now they've got Romania. They've asked for a subpoena from the FBI, so obviously the FBI are not willingly giving this information, so they're having to try and get the information.
Yeah.
So essentially, they're still investigating. But what they know is, obviously, that's going to be the whole question. Was Biden good enough not to get this link back to him? Because it's clear. I mean, anyone with a bit of logic, I know people get on Python, anyone with a bit of logic knows he's basically paying everyone plus his grandchildren and nearly every single person's dynasty. It's obviously for him.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to wait until this unfolds, till actual tangible evidence is released, that's verifiable.
So
only because I remember for 4
evidence, but nothing.
No, hold on.
Because you keep saying that.
No, let's spin a narrative. That's good. His grandkids.
Let me.
So, man, I don't know if you know. No one heard anything you said because you're speaking at the same time as Ben and Fidji. Not sure if you realize, but someone.
No, I realize. I just want to get my point across.
Oh, cool.
Right, I just want to say this. So just because, for 4 years I heard the Democrats talk about Donald Trump, well, the walls are closing and we're going to get him, right? This is it. He's 2 weeks away from indictment. He's 2 weeks away from being charged. I heard that for 4 years. So I'm going to just bite my tongue and wait until see if anything actual tangible shows up that shows criminal liability on a part of Joe Biden. Look, distasteful, of course. I think everyone in this room can agree with that, right? But I'm just so sick of hearing on both sides that the walls are closing.
Let me ask you a question, Ben. We have, so for liberals, Trump is facing legal issues for a lot of things that he did. For conservatives, the Bidens are under the microscope and they're facing legal issues for things they've done. Could we say that the imperfect, keyword imperfect, so I don't want Slammer to jump in and start telling me how imperfect it is, because I know it is, but the imperfect Putin is not facing any legal issues, nor is Xi Jinping, but we're seeing that in the US political spectrum, different policymakers are facing legal hurdles. So while it's imperfect, it's working. Yeah. At least it's working. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. The only thing I would say is this, and this does not leave a pleasant taste in my mouth, right? Again, I have been waiting, basically for the evidence to come out that suggests that, okay, Donald Trump is this mastermind criminal. He did this and he did that. And thus far, even though I'm not a Trump supporter, right, what we have is the Manhattan DA, which charges, they're a little bit far-fetched for me. That's just me. And we have a 30-year-old sexual assault liability case, right? So I will wait and see. But again, if this is it, if the next round of indictments, which I do believe will happen, out of Georgia, potentially Mar-a-Lago, if it's going to be of the same caliber as what we saw in the Manhattan DAs, I mean, I'm going to start to say, well, maybe he is the most persecuted man in history. Maybe it is a witch hunt. And that's a very hard thing for me to say. I'm going to state that out, right out the bat. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And
Yes, I
let's
don't agree
start.
with Ben. I don't agree
Yes,
with Ben.
I'll let you.
stating-
Sam, I'll let you respond. Do you mind after you respond to Ben, if you can also add to it about regarding the town hall? I'd love to get your thoughts and Trash's thoughts on what we can expect in today's town hall. And let's do the basics of what is a town hall. What is a CNN town hall? Talk a few examples in the past, historically, what we've seen.
Yeah, sure. So
Yeah, so the
don't
town-
agree- Sorry. I'll give it to Trash to give it summary. But yeah, I don't agree with Ben's point because it's basically minimizing what happened. I get that you're, and I'm.
But I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, and neither do you. Nobody
Of
knows what
course, no one-
happened, right? We won't know what happened.
What are you on about,
Right.
Ben? Let me just explain my point without interrupting. I know it's hard, right? So essentially, what I'm trying to say is, we obviously the scenario is we have got evidence as much as Ben is trying to make it look like there's not. We've got the bank statements. We've got the evidence of this money going from someone linked to the CCP to the entire generation of the Biden family. What we don't have is the direct link to Mr. 10%. That's what we need to. That's what we haven't got. So let's be clear about that.
Right. I just, before we start counting things that are released by Jamie Comer as concrete evidence and factual, right?
bank statements
They have
can
to
be
be
concrete, bro.
verified. There
have
are
to say-
many. No,
when
hold on,
it's-
Suleiman. There are many cases in which bank statements can be fabricated. They can be looked at through a different lens. So,
Yeah, but
I don't
bank
think
statements
and
will be
look,
released to everybody. He's gonna actually release the bank statements as well. So this is like.
Right. So again,
Yeah,
I'm
they're
going to
not
wait
fabricated.
until I'm going
You're
to
basically
wait.
saying he's manufactured.
What I'm no, I didn't say. I said, listen, no, Suleiman.
Ben,
No,
Suleiman, can you let him finish, man? So it's a discussion.
Right. So what I'm saying is this, right? Until there is tangible evidence that you can say, yes, absolutely, it is more likely than not that Joe Biden committed a crime. All we have right now are theories and, linking evidence. Sure, we have a lot of circumstantial evidence. I agree with you on that. However, you said we have evidence of, and I'd like to know, what do we have evidence of in relation to Joe Biden?
Can you see how Ben keeps changing the position? Let me be clear.
Well, no, I
Let
don't
me
keep changing the.
Let me,
Okay, please
let me
do.
repeat myself for the fifth time. I've said we have bank statements. We have evidence that money from State Energy HK Limited, at least this is one example of $3 million went from there to Biden's entire family, even his grandchildren. I'm sure they're really good legal experts as well. But
They are.
yeah, I'm sure.
You know,
I'm sure
they went to Yale.
Yeah,
5-year-old.
Yeah, the 5.
Youngest
exactly.
person in Yale.
So they're all brilliant legal experts as soon as they're born. But essentially, all of that we have.
Yep.
That is substantial evidence. And then I said we don't have anything.
Evidence of what?
I said we don't have anything that directly to combine. Then you keep saying everything's circumstantial.
No,
and
so
you're making it look like
no,
No,
so
Suleiman,
Suleiman-
hold on. Maybe I didn't pose my question properly.
No,
My
you
question
posed your
was-
question really well, but Sleman has a. This is common with me.
What? So
Sleman,
what
I think,
crime?
let me.
What you want about?
What
Yeah,
crime?
so
what
let me ask.
crime
Let me
are you
ask
alleging?
Benjamin.
It's not
Let me ask
weird
you.
that
Hold
someone
on.
would
Because
send
I know
money
what
to
it
the
is.
grandchildren.
When Ben.
Can you ask the question?
Ben
Can you
making
hold
a
on? Sorry,
statement-
can I ask the question without you doing? Without you, can I ask you the question without you doing personal attacks towards Ben? Because he's been a panelist on a regular basis here and bringing a lot of value.
I'm literally. I don't know why everyone's so like. Really
Okay, so
I
the
want
question.
both
Can
of
I
what
ask you?
Sulaiman's
Someone, let me
saying
ask
here.
you
It
the
doesn't make a lot of
question.
sense.
Ian,
Like,
let me ask Ian. Let me ask Simon a question, and you can jump in afterwards. So,
Yeah.
so I think what Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is that there's a lot of evidence that points towards potential shady shit going on and conflicts of interest, preferential treatment because of their last name, and things that I think we all agree is not right and shouldn't happen. But Ben, your question is, what is in terms of the evidence that you've mentioned, Sleman, which aspect of it is like, do we have anything to implicate not Joe Biden, but the Biden family in an actual crime, at least yet? Or do we just have things pointing to a potential crime? Simon, does that question make sense? I think you'll agree, Simon, with Benjamin. I think you guys agree. But I'll let you answer the question. I think Ian wants to jump in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very clear. Yeah, obviously they've not been charged, so obviously we can't say they've been charged. But like we said, this is what happens when people who are on panels do that. But that's why I always say, when you get a regular person who just looks at this from a logical perspective and like, you know what? Obviously, all this money going to all his family, including his grandchildren. Like, what is going on? It's $3 million going from State Energy through.
But what's the crime? What's the alleged crime?
Fair. So, guys,
It's not a crime.
It's evidence.
Not crime.
Fraud.
Okay, Ian, I think your answer, Ian, your answer is pretty accurate. I think there's no crime. It's a smoking gun, and there's likelihood that we will see a crime as the investigation
Exactly.
continues.
Yeah, that's what
I think.
got
Okay,
to follow
perfect.
the
Benjamin.
and see where it leads.
All right.
Yeah.
So Benjamin put 100% emoji. So did John. And Sayman, do you agree with that statement as well? There's a smoking gun, there's smoke, and there's a likelihood we'll see fire. Fidget will disagree, so we'll see why. But is that a fair
I think
statement?
it's more than smoke. Like basically, obviously they've not been charged, so that's the point. Yeah, I agree. They haven't been charged. It's that from that perspective. I agree. But
No, but yeah, sure. But
The
also we
bloody
haven't
glove.
seen. Yeah.
There's more. There's
Yeah,
more. Like, it's not just the bank records; it's the suspicious activity reports, the SARs, and the Treasury. There's now what was like 20 to 25 we heard. Now today during the press conference, it said well over 100 suspicious activity reports in the Treasury, which means these are transactions between parties through the banking system that's flagged as suspicious. So, I mean, there is evidence there. Now, that's going to require investigation to that point, but it's more than just bank records that are fabricated. This is through the U.S. Treasury.
Banks, because of U.S. law, banks flag any number of things as suspicious because they have to. Because if they don't flag something as suspicious, and regulators go back and see something that should have been flagged, the bank can get fined. So,
Yeah,
banks.
I was gonna add that one. Like, I've seen that, Andrew. It happens a lot. Like, you know, I'm in the AI space. I'm in the Web3 space.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
pretty
that happens a
common.
lot.
If you're
But
in
it's-
business and you get a big transaction, it's going to be flagged as suspicious. You explain it. Now, it's up to them, right? I mean, they have to explain
Tax
it.
is another one. Yeah.
They got to explain it.
So Ian, let me. I think.
Also, the thing is, you don't, as a bank customer, you don't necessarily know that the bank is flagging your transactions because
do.
they don't always tell you now. They don't always tell you.
Legally, they're supposed to tell you. They're supposed to ask you what the hell's going on.
Not
So I wanna-
necessarily. A lot of it is just a lot of the stuff is just CYA. But
Based
one
on
thing
what? Based on what are you saying? This, I don't believe that's true. I think that the American banking system is one of the most incorruptible in the world. Right? There's a reason for that. It's like almost as good as the Swiss. Like you can't like get away with money laundering. There's a reason all these systems are in place. You don't want money launderers to get away with stuff. Like if
George Santos allegedly did. He's being charged with money laundering.
Yeah, he's being charged. Exactly, he's been charged, right? And that's a big deal. So you know, like right now, we got to wait and see. You know, like the banks obviously they're going to be investigated. They're going to see what the transactions are. They're going to look deeper into it. I mean, that's what we're going to look out for, right? I mean, maybe it's nothing, right? Maybe it's completely innocent. Who knows, right? I'm not saying they're guilty.
Right.
Andrew, I'll let you comment, and then Andrew, right after you comment, if you don't mind, maybe you and Ian could give, and then Trash as well could give us just an overview of what we can expect in 45 minutes or in 55 minutes.
I have no idea what's going to
regarding
go
the
on in 50
CNN Trump
minutes.
poll. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
So one thing I just wanted to jump in on was I forget who was talking about it seeing somehow suspicious that money was going to different relatives of President Biden. And from what I understand from the documents that Comer released today, a lot of these transactions date to 2015, and he was specifically talking about transactions to Hallie Biden and two of her children. And around that same time is when Beau Biden, Hunter's brother, the president's eldest son, died. And Hunter was dating Hallie Biden after that.
It's carrying on an affair.
No, Hallie Biden wasn't married, so it wasn't an affair. Her husband was dead. But
okay.
And anyway,
creepy.
Yeah, a little bit. But
it's very creepy. Who does that? Jesus.
I mean, what widow goes out on dates again after their husband dies?
Yeah, I'm saying. So I didn't know how to do it. What's creepy about someone who's got their husband or wife has passed away? Why is it creepy to?
Why would you date your sister-in-law? You know, her husband just died.
Oh, okay.
Ask
Creepy. Guys,
Ask Jacob, the son of Isaac.
Anyway, the creepy part is the sister.
Binding of Isaac is right. Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Andrew.
Anyway, it's so Comer was talking about how these transactions show some sort of shady intent, but if you look at the timeline, that doesn't really make sense because when those transactions were taking place was when Hunter was dating Hallie, and it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to be, helping to support her and her children, who were, his nieces and nephews. So I think, Comer has been talking about those things for months. He's not answered questions about uh, why he thinks it would be unusual for Hunter to be transferring money. He's gotten to the woman that he's dating, or who happens to be his. I don't even know how you describe her at that point, but his brother's widow, who's also his girlfriend.
Sister-in-law.
So guys, I have a question. Andrew and Ian, do we have and then I want to move to the Trump town hall, the
Yeah.
CNN town hall. But I wouldn't be like, is it just me, or is like, haven't we seen cases of corruption, or the Clinton family benefiting from Clinton's last family name, or the Bush family benefiting, or obviously we've talked about the Trump family.
Clinton,
Uh,
yeah.
It's not
Bush,
right.
no.
I just want to be clear. I'm not saying it's right. What I'm saying is, like, for me, it's like, yeah, I'm not surprised that happens. Now, we've never, if we link it to direct policy, certain aspects of policy, the policy decisions that were made that would benefit the family,
Well, you
and I'm
really
talking
don't wanna
about
jump
major
into
policy
Clinton, though.
decisions. Say that again.
I said you really don't want to jump to Clinton. There's a lot to go over what he did in Arkansas. Like, he was taking money from the CIA. They were it's cartel money. It's very complicated. They've made a bunch.
And
of
how about
movies
is
this.
there examples in the Bush family as well, Ian?
No, not to my knowledge. They're pretty incorruptible.
Yeah, except staging
okay.
a war with weapons of mass destruction to invade foreign nations.
Yeah,
I mean, you can go over that.
Yeah, but did we
when you
find?
jump
But
to
Dan, just on
corruption,
your,
no.
let me ask. Yeah, let me add. Dan, is it? What did they have? Did the Bush family have any investments in Iraq, or no? They probably didn't
No, that's
have
that's
any
more
investments
Cheney
that
than anything else.
benefited.
That's
from
more
the Iraq
Cheney
family.
than anything else. He benefited
think-
from being, having stocks in Halliburton and then, making a ton of money in Iraq.
Like, look,
but that's
Ian,
Cheney.
I'll say this. Like, I do business around the world, and like, the U.S. system is fucking solid. Like, it's tough. Like, businesses
less,
that
yeah.
want to do,
Yeah.
like businesses that want to do
It's
corrupt
good.
shit,
That's why
businesses
people
that want to
do
be
business in
scammy.
America. It's
Yeah,
it's
they
re-
don't.
it's
They
relatively
run.
not
They
corrupt.
leave. They leave the U.S. Any criminals leave the U.S. They don't want dares to come to the U.S.
I 100%
So
agree with that.
there's
Which is
there's a
why
lot
it's
of
so bad
flaws.
that Joe and Hunter did this. I'm assuming they did.
And I'm
Because-
glad. Ian, let me add one thing. I'm glad that we're taking it so serious. Like, I
Yeah,
think
we should.
things
I
like
don't
this.
like the fact that this is a political thing. It shouldn't be a political thing, right? I think that when anyone tries to, get above the law and use it to their own advantage, take money from foreign governments, I think that is something that should be prosecuted. Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's the
So, your
president.
thoughts on Trump?
small
What's your
person.
thoughts on Trump in this context?
Same thing. Like, I would investigate all of that.
Fantastic.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm all
Beautiful.
about
Alright,
having
so-
standards. Yeah.
All right, beautiful. So let's move to the CNN town hall. Who could give us an overview? Maybe Trash, you can kick it off. Of what we can expect in the town hall. How does it work? What's the structure like? And what should we be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so it's going to be, I mean, obviously, since CNN's hosting it, right? A lot of the questions are going to be loaded. Sometimes they take questions from, like, the crowd. You have a moderator who's moderating it, and it's kind of like it's not a debate, but they're more or less standing up, and they kind of answer questions and talk about it. It's a little bit more free-flowing than, say, like an official debate. It should be interesting. I would suspect, just my guess, that Trump's probably going to try to take it over in his usual style, but we shall see.
Yeah, you're pretty much right on the format. CNN has given, I don't know if they had tickets or however but they chose the audience from people who are either Republicans or Republican-leaning independents, because this is theoretically for the primary, and they would be voting in the Republican primary. The moderator is Caitlin Collins. I know Caitlin. She covered the White House for the Daily Caller for the first bit of the Trump administration, and then CNN hired her away from the Daily Caller. She's very good, very fair.
She's moderate, which is important.
Yep, I don't really know her politics, but that's, if you want to say she's moderate, that's one way to.
That's fine. I think that's a plus. Yeah.
What I would say is she has big brass balls and does not take shit from anyone, and so I think she's probably the best person they could have picked for this, and
I would be inclined to agree. Yeah.
there's there's a lot of griping from liberal circles and other networks about how CNN shouldn't have they shouldn't platform Donald Trump. I can see both sides of that, but like it or not, he's probably going to be the Republican nominee for president, and you gotta put people in front of the voters. And I think one thing that people aren't really talking about is that I have a strong suspicion that the Donald Trump you're going to see tonight is not the guy that we last saw on a debate stage a couple years ago. He's been in Florida. He's been isolated. He hasn't been sparring with reporters on a almost daily basis, and I don't think you're going to see a Donald Trump who is as sharp as he was when he was president. If you want to.
Andrew, a question, Trash, as you guys comment on this, first, I just found out, someone who always messages me during spaces, Hunter Biden was married when he dated Bo's wife. So I think that's what you were saying.
Affair. Yep.
Okay. Whether or not it's an affair, it's weird either way.
No,
but anyway,
that would be an affair, yeah. It means it's
I don't,
on your wife,
For me, an affair is one thing, but this is just odd when it's your brother's wife. Anyway, going back to Trash's...
It's biblically accurate. You're supposed to, according to the Bible.
Man, there's a whole list of biblical things that sound weird as hell. So this is...
I'm just trying to acquiesce to Slayton and Ian.
Man, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what weird... I don't know what weird shit... Sorry, I muted you, Ian, by accident. But I don't know what weird shit you do, Fiji, and you're trying to warrant it with this comment. Let's go back to Trump. Ian, I'm going to go to Trump if that's okay. And Trash, you go first, and Ian, and then and John. Guys, like a very simple question. Whether you like Biden or you like Trump or you hate either one of them, I just don't understand. Like, how's Biden going to be able, and maybe actually want Trash and then Brian to go on that one, or Sarah, sorry, you have your hand up, perfect. How will Biden be able to debate Trump? It's going to be very difficult.
Well, yeah, and so far the language that's being used is that Biden won't be actually debating, which is ridiculous, and it should be done regardless of who you're going to vote for. So that should be done.
Wait. Can I just correct that? That was within the Democratic Party. That was within the Democratic Party, not in general.
No. Yeah. Well, that's possible. So we'll see how that goes. But one thing I wanted to go back on what Andrew said. So I paid very close attention to Trump's first speech at Mar-a-Lago when he came out and he did that speech, and it was a very different Trump, right? It wasn't a rally Trump. It wasn't it was a very, very moderated Trump, and he's going to have to answer some questions for voters that even want to vote for him. He's going to have to answer questions probably about abortion. He's probably going to have to answer questions about COVID. He's going to have to answer some questions that I think the Trump voters want to hear. I think this town hall is going to be a lot more important than people are giving it credit for it. So I think kind of want to talk about it. Yeah.
Just a small...
It's gonna say Andrew. Let's go to Sarah, then Andrew. Yeah, go ahead quickly, and then we'll go to Sarah.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. I think we'll set the stage for what we're gonna see later on.
Just a slight correction about Biden and Trump not debating. That's a general election thing, but it's very possible that there may not be any general election debates because the Republican Party has thus far pulled out of the Commission on Presidential Debates that has run those general election debates for many election cycles. So
why did they pull out?
Because like always, they gripe about it being unfair, but it's the best system we've had, except the worst system we have except for all the others. So there's was basically they're pissed because the moderators aren't fire-breathing conservatives, but that never happens. You don't get fire breathers on either side. But if either side is saying they're not going to debate, it's the Republicans who've said they're not going to participate. The Democratic Party is not holding primary debates. The Republican Party did not when Donald Trump was in the White House. Traditionally, the incumbent does not debate in the primary.
So I just want to say, not go. But I want to say that I think we're going to see, like what Trash said, we might see a different Donald Trump here. I think he's going to try to appeal to moderate voters, and it is going to be more important than people are giving it credit for. I think that they're going to ask a lot of questions about, wedge issues, right, like abortion, things like that, right, like immigration and so on. And his answers have to cater to a moderate audience, and it really depends on how this is going to play out for him in the primary. If his answers are too moderate or not conservative, let's say he even leans liberal about the trans issues, for example, and he has said in the past that he would have no problem with women using girls, trans women using girls' locker rooms, restrooms, etc. If they bring that up and his answers are consistent with his previous liberal positions on these issues, that is going to have a very significant impact for him in the primary, because DeSantis would be able to use it against him, right? They would say, hey, he's not a real conservative, he's just a liberal, and look at what he's just said here at the CNN town hall. And it really depends on whether, I would see the MAGA influencers will be spinning it. It'll be like, well, he had to tell the liberals that they were going to do something, but he was tricking them. He's playing five-dimensional chess. I don't believe so, right? It really depends on what he says, and he has to be very careful here. He can't afford to alienate the moderates, but at the same time, he can't afford to alienate his own base, right? Conservatives are the people who are going to vote for him. So if he pisses them off too much by being too liberal, he's going to have a serious issue.
Sarah?
Thank you. I think first off, I think they'll address the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit right off. I think they'll try to get that out of the way right up front. I think it would be smart. And I think if Trump is measured in his responses and is calm, because the moderates are looking for an excuse to not vote for him. So I think if he's very measured and calm in his response to not only what's going on in New York, but with the E. Jean Carroll case, I think it could be very helpful to him. But Ian's right. He has to be careful. He can't be seen as being too moderate or going too liberal. His base is very conservative, and he has to play to that base. But I think if he's measured and he's calm and he addresses things and he tends to go off the rails, especially when he's doing his rallies. If he doesn't go off the rails, I think the conservatives will consider it a win.
Just a note on that, he also tends to go off the rails when he gets questions he doesn't like, particularly if it's from a woman. That was something that, being in the White House press corps, we all noticed during his time in office when it was a female reporter confronting him. And in some cases, it was Caitlyn. He got very, very pissed off. So I think that, that's going to be a factor potentially, depending on how his team has prepped him for this.
Do we know
so, John, I see your hand up. So just quickly,
Caitlin Collins.
Guys, just quickly, I saw. I haven't looked into it. I don't know what the source is. None of that. So, if someone can give me context. There was someone that worked at the White House while Trump was president, making allegations that Trump was sexually abusing other people in the White House. Did I read that before I sleep, or did I just dream about this? Was there anything like that? Or was that a dream?
Not abusing, and it was
harassing. Okay.
Stephanie Grisham.
Okay, and there's no evidence, nothing at all.
And somebody else. Just... There were two women. There was another woman. It was harassment, though. It wasn't abuse.
Harassing, not abusing. Okay. What's the difference?
Okay.
The thing I wanted to mention here, we have to
John, just before you jump in, sorry, John, I wanted to give you the mic, but I think there's a difference between harassment and abuse. Like, harassment is very broad and vague, so it just allows it to be. I'm not saying it's right, just want to be clear, but it just allows people to kind of use it to.
Telling you I think you have a nice ass. Abuse is me grabbing your ass.
Like I harass slime men on a daily basis, for example.
That is actually that's not the legal differentiation. That is literally not.
What is okay? Then I take back my comment. And can you tell me?
You're trying to separate assault and battery. Assault is the reasonable fear of physical violence or impact. Battery is the action of that impact. Harassment and assault is not that differentiation. Assault just implies more of a direct impact, often with sexuality, that is also a subset of harassment.
John, jump in. I'm just looking at the definition of both.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
Yeah. So I was just saying before we were discussing how so many people have an issue with CNN giving Trump a platform, and we've been seeing this in politics more and more, and it's very prevalent on the left. that people like AOC saying getting Tucker Carlson off television and platforming being so and such an effective tool. This is exactly why there's such a partisan crack down the center here. Is we're not allowing politicians to talk across the aisle. We're not allowing them to reach different audiences, and it's all to just continually manipulate the people. And it's literally the biggest bullshit attempt to keep control. And I think more and more with Twitter Spaces like this and different ways people are getting the news, it's starting to break, and that is why we're seeing such a mad dash and blitz to try to silence people.
Isn't this the opposite?
Yeah,
Basically got CNN putting
I
Trump on
agree.
it.
I was just gonna say I agree. I that's something I disagree with the left on is them attacking CNN, calling for a boycott on CNN because they're gonna have a Trump town hall.
Ridiculous on both sides. Yeah.
I mean it's just like why are you gonna silence him? Let us hear what he has to say. I mean, yeah, a lot of us aren't gonna like what he has to say, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a good thing for Republicans. I think that it could also backfire on him. And if we hear him tell a lie and we can fact check it and see it's a lie, that's not a bad thing. So I don't know. I don't think the boycott is necessary or even called for at all.
And Sarah, I mean,
Sarah?
do you think that in terms of the way the interviews are going to be conducted, it's not going to be one where they're going to throw softballs at Trump?
Well, I don't think so because.
Yeah, but I'd like.
Oh.
I'd like. Sorry. I was gonna say I'd like CNN. I'd like to hear Trump on CNN. I'd like to hear Biden on Fox. I don't want to hear Biden on CNN.
Biden's
I don't
never
want
going
to
to be
hear
on
Trump
Fox.
on Fox.
I agree.
I'm just saying what I'd like. Go ahead, Sarah.
I want Biden on Fox. I want to see if he can.
Yeah, but he won't have a teleprompter.
Well, neither will Trump.
Yeah, we don't want him on Fox.
But
Trump actually has half a brain left. We don't want Biden, who's a walking like. I love Democrats. I love mids. I love libs, but that motherfucker can't actually hold a conversation. We don't want him on anything.
But I think that when people start saying we don't want to see a conservative on liberal media, I think that is where it gets very dangerous. We have to see these people.
It's kind of crazy, right? Like the fact that you have a president who refuses to speak to half his constituents, whether they voted for him or not, doesn't matter, right? They're still Americans, right? The fact that he doesn't want to talk to them is so scary. I mean, it's like, what the fuck has happened to America? I mean, Ronald Reagan spoke to liberals, George Bush spoke to liberals.
So Biden, hold on, Biden doesn't want to speak to conservative media?
Well, I mean, technically, I would say no, because they tend to ask the harder questions. Liberal media wants him to look a little better. So I think that, I don't know, because I've read that Caitlin Collins is a very conservative journalist. I don't know if anybody can fact check that. That's just what I've read online. I think that she has the potential to be tough on him. And I don't think that any of them should be let off the hook. I think that the questions need to be tough. Also, just I would love to see politicians come onto Spaces. I would love to be able to have a conversation with a presidential candidate. Put Biden up on this space. Put Trump up on this space. I have heard questions asked by speakers and moderators of these spaces that are tough. That I don't think.
You got Matt Gaetz and Thomas Massey to come to Spaces.
Oh, really? I've never seen. Next time you see one, I want to. Throw me.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah, because
Matt Gaetz is awesome.
Really.
I mean, he's willing to answer questions, right? And without a monitor, without some guy that's saying, "Oh, you can't answer that question," like he just takes questions. I mean, he's the guy you can just talk to, and that's awesome. Whether you like his politics or not, you got to appreciate
that's
that.
That's what we need.
Same thing with Thomas Massey.
Because it humanizes them a bit. I would love to be able to say to Donald Trump, "Listen, what about this? What about that?" And get him in real time where he's talking to real people. We're not paid to do this,
So Ben, I want to ask you a question. I know you got your hand up, so you want to say something else. Obviously, in 2015 and 2016, when it came to Trump, there was a lot more rhetoric in his statements. This time, it seemed like there's not, but then now it does seem like he is going back into that phase again. Do you think you're going to see a lot of rhetoric in this CNN space?
Probably not. I think he's going to be a little bit more tame and subtle, which is probably a good thing, right? I mean, everyone's aware of his fiery temper and his, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. So, probably the people around him as advisors said, look, let's take a little bit of a different strategy this time around for this interview for this audience, especially just considering of the E. Jean Carroll decision and so forth. But I wanted to ask Brian. I have been meaning to ask him this for a while. It's a little bit off topic, but do the people on the left actually believe, like Biden supporters, do they believe that he is indeed mentally competent and of sound mind, going into the 2024 election cycle? Or is this just basically, you could put a shoe up there and we would vote it simply because we're terrified of Donald Trump? And I say that with all honesty, right? That's not meant to be a rude question. It's just, I don't like Donald Trump, right? I don't like Biden either. I'm probably more in the DeSantis camp. However, even it's just very hard to see Joe Biden. Well, you don't really see him interact with people all that often, right? It's just, is that not concerning to you? Where there seems to me, and I'm not a physician, but there's clearly some. Well, he's old, right? And that's a natural course in a person's age.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
So,
Brett. Yeah.
so like first, I think that's definitely a fair question. I mean, he's going to be 86 at the end of his second term if he wins. I think he's of sound mind. I think he's definitely slowing. I think that his speech is slowing. He has a speech impediment, and as he ages, it's getting worse. I don't think that means that he's not thinking clearly or anything like that. I don't think there's any evidence of that. But I think it is a concern. I think it's a concern that he's going to be 86. I will vote for Biden over Trump for sure. Do I think that there's possibly better people that could be running, younger people that I would prefer? Yeah,
How about
I
Newsom?
think there definitely is. Newsom,
No,
yeah,
and I
think
appreciate
Newsom
that
is.
answer.
I think Newsom. I like Newsom. I think he's a little bit too far to the left to maybe. I think we need somebody more in the middle to go against Trump. So you can pull the moderates. Otherwise, you're going to have people not voting, or you're going to have
I mean,
people.
Newsom isn't far left,
And,
though. I mean, you look at his policies.
No,
and,
he isn't. No,
and,
I
and
don't think he is.
he's clearly moderate. I mean, I know a lot of like Republicans hate the guy and they shit on him, but like I look at his actual policies. Look what he actually says. What he does in California, it's not that crazy. I mean, it's San Francisco and Los Angeles notwithstanding, right? He doesn't run those cities. You can't blame him for those.
and
But
just to
So
follow up.
if I had to pick two alternates, my two alternates would be, well, I actually have three that I would be happy with, and that is Newsom. Newsom would be one of my top three. It would also be Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I think that the fact that he's gay, that would hurt him though, and with a lot of people, unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way. And then I like John Ossoff, as well as Shapiro from Pennsylvania, but I wish they had a chance, but I don't think it's obviously they're not going to get one.
And I appreciate that answer, Brian. It just the one thing about Donald Trump, you knew that whether it was whoever he was meeting with or wanted to get something done, it was clear that he ran the show. Like you could see he didn't take orders from anyone. That's just my opinion. And with Biden, just simply because he's not able to carry on a coherent two-way conversation, I have to wonder like who is really making the decisions behind the curtain, right? It's just I don't know that man is capable of making any decision. I'll leave it at
Well,
that.
do you remember when Trump had first taken office? He talked about how he wanted to go in, drain the swamp, and do all of these great things. And then he gave a speech shortly after, and he said, "You know what, everyone? I went into the Oval Office, and some guys with black sunglasses and briefcases came in, and they let me know what was up." And I mean, that's just the way that it is. The president's really just a face. They may be able to make some final decisions, but really, we need to be looking at, like you said, who is giving the decisions to the presidents that they need to make.
What? He said that? Where's Dan?
Suleiman, do you agree with me?
Did Trump actually say that some black people with suits came in, and that?
No, not black people, not black people.
No,
I think he said men.
People with let me rephrase. Sorry, I had some food in my mouth. Did Trump actually say that men in black suits came in and told me what's what, and then I had to listen?
No, he did
Yeah,
not say
I
that.
don't think he said that.
I've never heard that,
and-
and that
and-
would be
yeah.
concerning, right? I've never heard
Yeah,
that, ever.
that's ridiculous. That's not Donald Trump. And tonight, you will see a very similar Donald Trump. He's not going to, as much as he might be told to stay controlled and try to stay controlled, it's not what he does. It's not who he is. And he's uncomfortable when he's asked to do, to become something else. He is who he is. Like, I've met this guy. I spent some time with Gavin Newsom last week. That guy's extremely charismatic, powerfully charismatic. And he will become more central or middle, left, less left, if he actually runs for president. I'd like to ask the room, does anybody think that the negative media that Biden's getting right now has anything to do with the establishment simply wanting Trump and Biden both out of the way?
100%. Yep, 100%. Like, Biden's too old. He's possibly compromised. You can have much better leaders, younger leaders, more charismatic leaders, people that you can actually get behind, right? I mean,
or they got their guy or gal,
Right, yeah.
They're going to slip in. They're going to slip in 12 or 13 months before the election.
Grant, I would like to see Newsom. I think he's more centrist, more moderate, and he's in control. Regardless of what you think of the guy's politics, whether it's too progressive or something, at least he's in control. He's in charge. You know who's there, right? So Biden,
Grant,
it's so like.
But I'm suggesting something a little more sinister. It won't be with time to run. They'll set it up to bounce Biden out and to slip somebody in. I don't think it'll be Kamala, but somebody that they could push through that would not get a lot of scrutiny, maybe because that person doesn't want the scrutiny. Michelle would be like, it would be the enthusiasm that would shift over there, and the distraction that would create would be phenomenal, and probably not cost a lot, and it'd be organic and natural. And I think she wants a lot of cover if she were to run. And she wouldn't want to do it for 2 years.
If I could just, Grant, I always thought that, and I have no legal basis for suggesting this, but when the Biden classified documents hidden in the garage popped up, I always thought that maybe that was somebody around Biden trying to give him a signal, it's time for you to bow out. So I take what you say. Yeah, I think it's very possible.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm still trying to digest Brian saying that he doesn't think that Biden has lost his cognitive abilities beyond just increased stuttering. That's astonishing to me.
Well, didn't he shake hands with a ghost?
What can you point to that says that other than him stuttering?
Well, didn't he shake hands with a ghost? Didn't he shake hands with somebody who wasn't there?
Brian, he doesn't know what side of the stage to exit from.
He doesn't know which door to walk into in the White House.
That stuff's not exactly fair. I mean, I can point to that stuff.
Brian's just trolling the room when he says that stuff, guys. Come on.
No, but Brian, let me ask you, is it really that he's actually losing his mind, or do you think this is again, propaganda?
I don't think he's losing his mind. I think that there's a lot of out of context videos or images of him, and yeah, I mean, when he turns the wrong way and walks on the wrong side of the stage, I think people read into that too much. You have probably four different guys telling him to do different stuff. The president is directed most of the time where they're going and what they're doing. They're not just.
What about him calling upon a dead reporter, or the other when he went to shake hands with somebody who wasn't there? I mean, and I'm not criticizing the man, right?
What about, when he was in Ukraine, they had to tell him where to stand because he was confused as to where he could even stand. It's obviously stand next to Zelensky, right? But they put a red dot on the ground. It's stand here, stand here. It's really, who needs that? If you're an adult, you're gonna figure out where to stand. You're not gonna need directions. This is insane.
I mean, I could see myself walking on this stage and not knowing where to stand.
Yeah, but would you need that though? Would you need a pointer to be stand here?
Brian,
I don't
Brian,
think so.
I get it.
Brian,
I get it,
even bigger.
Yeah.
Brian, have you ever had a lid day? I mean, consider this. He has lid days where it's he just can't come out and deal with people. He had that during his campaign. We don't hear about them now that he's in office. But for anyone to think that he's actually making any serious decisions rather than a circle of people around him who are making all decisions and using him as a puppet I can't even understand how rational people genuinely really believe that. I mean, if you want to tell the public that because he's the face of the franchise, I understand that. But to say in good conscience, I really think this guy is on top of. He's making decisions.
I think that
struggle with that.
I think that he has a good team around him that helps him make decisions, just like most presidents do. I think something Trump did do is that he took a lot into his own hands that most presidents wouldn't have. So I think comparing to Trump, it's apples to oranges. Compare him to a Bush or Reagan, and I think that
Brian,
that you're going to have more similarities.
Brian, it's easy to criticize Trump, and everybody here, even the people that support him, say, "Yeah, dude, the guy goes too far. He's petty. He says crazy shit." You never ever say your guy ever does any weird shit.
Yep.
And when he stumbles around the stage, hang on a
agree
second. When he stumbles around the stage over and over, these aren't videos; these are live interviews where he doesn't know where to go. I mean, if I invite you to speak on my stage and you didn't know where to go when it was over, I'd be like, bro, let's not have him back. Unfortunately, we got this guy for 4 years, and he's asking for another 4.
Yeah, I mean, and the comment about him, the comment about him asking for ice cream right after the killing of the kids, right? I'm Joe Biden. I'm looking for ice cream. No, look, I am not not a Trump guy, not a Biden guy, but you have to admit, I mean, either that's cognitive decline or just a lack of empathy. I mean, who does that, right? I'm Joe Biden and I like ice cream. Why don't you first start saying, my God, my heart is broken. This tragedy has unfolded, but I came down to find ice cream. That's problematic, Brian.
So I agree that he stumbles around a lot. I agree that he stutters and makes gaps a lot. I think that that's very clear. And I think that is a part of him being an older man. He's 80. At the same time, the left claimed the same about Trump. And when Trump was drinking water or walking down a ramp, or I think both sides, they take incidences and blow them up because it's the president. And Ben, I didn't see the ice cream gaffe, so I can't comment on that. I'm gonna actually go back and look at it.
When the kids died, he was like, "I'm down here for ice cream," and everyone's like,
That is what he said, right, Ian? I've got the right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up. I'll check that out.
But hey, Brian, the difference is when people, trash on Trump, it's not about his age. It's about his character, decision making, character flaws. With Biden, we're attaching it to, hey, can he run? Can he lead? Who's in control? Who's telling him what to do? That's, I think, what I'm hearing the room say they're concerned about.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you remember, and if you go back and you Google it, you'll probably see there were numerous people saying that Trump had Alzheimer's, and it was ridiculous. Like obviously he didn't, right? But there were psychiatrists that came on and said that he had all kinds of mental disorders, and it's just taking small glimpses of their life and blowing it up when they make a stutter or do something stupid.
Like you have the former White House physician, right, who treated both Obama and Trump, saying that Biden clearly has a cognitive failure, right? I mean, he needs to be tested.
Wait. Who said that? Which physician?
That was Ronnie Jackson.
Ronnie Jackson.
Yeah, but he wasn't Biden's doctor. He was Trump's doctor.
Yeah,
and he's a Republican in Congress.
He was Obama's doctor, and he has, the ability to diagnose.
Yeah,
things, right?
but he's obvious. I mean, he's a Republican in Congress. He's pretty far to the right.
mean, his medical opinion has nothing to do with it.
I would rather hear somebody that doesn't have a political leaning say that, and I believe it. If I heard that from somebody that was actually working with Biden. Biden's doctor said the exact opposite. Biden broke his ankle, so his walking is not great. That doesn't mean he can't lead. He stutters. That doesn't mean he can't lead. I think that some of these gaffes, I think it's probably shouldn't be happening, and I think it's definitely a sign of aging. But that doesn't mean that he still can't do his job if he has a good team around him.
Brian, he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember what question was asked when he's 30 seconds into the answer. He starts drifting into answering a completely different question. I mean,
but
seriously,
if you go back, go back 15 years and do the same thing.
Yeah, but he's calling on people. When he was answering the question, he mentioned the lady's name who had been dead for several years, right? I mean, that's concerning, is it not? I mean, these are not just little gaffes. This stutter has nothing to do with it. yeah, his age is one thing, but again, just for me as again, who am I? I'm no one, but just the lack of coherency and cognitive abilities, it's concerning for me, right? It just is.
Brian's not concerned by it. He trusts those people, those invisible people that control him.
So my granddad.
Grant, Grant, I guess I'm never going to be invited on a stage at your convention.
Dude, not if you walk on a stage and you don't know which way to go when you get off.
Yeah.
It's
mean,
weird, bro.
So my granddad, he had Alzheimer's before he died, right?
Stages have one way on and one way off. There's not
and the thing I noticed about my granddad and Biden is, it's sad. Like I don't laugh at what Biden's going through. I know it's very difficult, like having a personal experience with my granddad having Alzheimer's, very similar, like gazing off into the distance, not knowing what's going on. Sometimes he's lucid, sometimes he was lucid. Biden's the same way, right? There are those moments of lucidity, but then, there are moments where he's sundowning. He's not really sure what's happening. He can't answer questions. I mean, I see the exact same thing in Biden. I mean, it's anyone who's experienced, someone in the family member who's had Alzheimer's knows this. They recognize this.
And look at Dianne Feinstein, right? People are being respectful. Democrats are saying, listen, you've done you even tweeted it out, right? You have done a wonderful service to the country, but it's time for you to step aside. So at which point does your hatred for Trump, kind of take second stage and just say, look, for the best of the country and for the Democratic Party, it's time for someone who can have a two-way conversation.
So just for the audience, the stream Brian, hold on, but I'm gonna say something and then get your thoughts on it. First, the stream will start in 15 minutes. So just giving the audience a heads up. We'll be streaming it here live and commenting afterwards. But Brian, let me articulate something and let me know your thoughts. So if I tell you the following, Biden's cognitive ability has diminished to an extent where you don't want him to make decisions deciding the path for the world's most powerful country and the world's biggest economy. Yet that's not necessarily an extremely bad and concerning thing. I'm not saying it's good, but it's not a bad thing as long as he gives away those decision-making abilities to his cabinet, to people he trusts.
No.
Because we've seen a lot of. I'll finish my statement and I'll let you get your thoughts. Because we've seen a lot of companies, and I'm just thinking out loud. We've seen a lot of companies that are led by a CEO or a founder who owns 100% of the shares or a majority of the shares. And they're in their 90s and they pass away owning most of the shares, but they just give the decision making. Samsung's one of many examples. So they give.
He's basically dead.
Yeah, exactly. So let me give this statement to Brian, get his thoughts on it. So we've seen these executives very old, that the company continues operating well, hitting great profits, because they're given their decision-making powers to people that are cognitively in a better shape. Is that a fair statement, or you disagree with it? Because I think you disagreed.
Yeah. So I don't think Biden's at that point. I don't think he's lost significant cognitive ability and he can't lead the nation. I think that if it came to that, I would hope that he would step down, and I would not be surprised if he won re-election if he was to step down halfway through, and not because he lost cognitive ability, but because he realized that he is slowing and he doesn't have the energy anymore. I'm not saying that an old 84-year-old, 86-year-old should be president. I don't really think they should. I think that there's younger Democrats that they could be running and probably should. But I also think that Biden's earned the ability, the right to run again. And if they think he's the best shot, then I'm all for it.
Has there been any cognitive tests done on Biden or that we know of?
Yeah. So the White House doctor, every year he has a physical. The report came back and it said that he had no Alzheimer's or no cognitive, whatever you want to call it.
Come on, man.
Well, yeah,
but how trustworthy are those? Like, I've done a similar test.
Come on, Mario, you know.
I know, but like I've done a similar test on Slayman, man. It came out, all aces. So I know that you cannot trust these.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can show you 50 people that they would pass it, and we all know they're fucking nuts.
I would hope that if it came back, if the doctor said, "Hey, man, you got a problem," that Biden and the people around him would recognize that and ask him to step down or say, "Hey, don't run again." That hasn't happened. I trust that if that was the case, that's what would happen.
Come on, Brian.
I mean, I don't see why not.
You're so dishonest with the room, though, man.
Grant,
No,
do you
no.
think?
What
No,
I mean,
no.
why wouldn't they do that? What would be the damage caused? I prefer a younger candidate. I think that Democrats that think that happened, if the White House doctor thought that happened, I think they'd be honest with him, and I think it would leak out that this is the case. And so I don't know.
Brian,
I mean,
Brian,
you can.
Brian, if what you're saying is true, that there's a circle of people, a great team around him, don't you think it's in that great team's interest in trying to help him win re-election? Because they're basically serving as if they're the president of the United States and he's a figurehead. So would they not want to have controlled messaging to ensure that Biden's health is as little an issue as possible?
But I mean, there's people around him that don't have a political standing, family members, and like all those. And Kamala Harris, she could be running right now if she wanted to.
You don't think Barack Obama is one of
She
the
could be
people who's
leaking
around him?
crap if she wanted to.
Do you not think Barack Obama is one of the people who's very close in that circle as far as influential in what's happening?
I do.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so don't you think that Barack Obama, who probably, if he is in that circle, we have to assume that he is the dominant player there, because who the hell is going to stand up to Barack Obama? Let's face it. I mean, Susan Rice, no one else around him is going to be standing up to Barack Obama. So if he is the one with his hand up figuratively, up the crack of the puppet and making all decisions, don't you think it's in his interest to make sure that Kamala is not the one who's next president, because he won't have as much control, or anyone else, but that it's actually helpful to have Puppet Joe up there?
I don't think Obama gives a crap about control anymore.
Oh, sure
I
he
mean,
does.
no, I mean, why? He retired president. What does he care?
Why did he move to Washington, D.C.? Why would he move? Well, no president has ever done that. Why would he move there?
He has foundations. He has charities. He has his library. I mean, I don't.
That's in Chicago,
Obviously, he doesn't
Brian.
have political ambitions.
I mean,
I didn't hear you, Doc.
Sorry, go ahead, Doc. No, Doc was just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, all that is in Chicago. His library, which still isn't built, is in Chicago. All of his papers are there in Chicago. Are we really going to ignore the fact that the guy's a traitor and a pedophile, and what's happening on the border? I mean, do those issues become something that we talk about when we talk about the competency of Joe Biden?
I'd be happy to talk about the border. Like, I'm actually curious what Republicans think the solution is, other than building a wall.
Well, we've got a space on it tomorrow, so we will discuss that tomorrow, Brian.
Well, we showed the wall didn't really work, and it was a waste of money, didn't we?
Hey, Mario, if you don't mind, Mario, I threw a poll up in the nest. I'd love to see. My brother actually asked me to do this. I'd love to see how much of the room thinks Joe Biden, contrary to whatever Brian's talking about, thinks Joe Biden is mentally competent, meaning 100%.
So, Grant, let me ask you.
Brian, even if he's not mentally competent.
Grant, let me ask you a question, right? So, Grant, I understand that it does look like he's got dementia, right? But how much of that do you think is, again, a bit of propaganda from the right?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. No. There's never. It could not be. Not even possible that it would be zero. Some of it is definitely played and propagandized and pushed and promoted, but it doesn't mean. The stuttering doesn't bother me. I don't know where I am. Like when this is your job. Your job is to go to a podium, do a presentation, and walk off. It's not fucking complicated. It's not a four-way stop sign. Like it's not figure out directions. It's go outside, do the podium. That's all he does, guys. You guys don't think he's doing more than that, do you? And when you mess that one thing up, and it repeatedly, I don't know where I'm going. I'm shaking hands with people that aren't there. I'm mentioning people in a room that aren't in the room. In fact, they're dead. Those are signs. Those aren't mishaps. They're not. If you did it one or two times, one thing. There's strings and strings to these. And he's not the same guy he was 20 years ago. And nobody said he was smart 20 years ago, by the way.
I think he was stuff 20 years ago. He was very, very coherent. I mean, it was articulate. He was a very strong speaker, very charismatic. I mean, he's the guy people called America's uncle. I mean, people looked up to him. They were like, wow,
look back to his debate with Palin, right? I mean, he was coherent, he was strong, he was poised, and we don't see that anymore.
I mean, Sarah, another question for you is just a link to what everyone's saying. is when it came out last week. I mean, people knew it anyway, but just the blatant obviousness from the pictures, where essentially the reporter had the predetermined questions, and he had kind of like a chart of who the picture of the reporter and what questions they were going to ask, and essentially it was all scripted. Do you think that's again another problematic where you literally don't, everything's scripted, you can't trust the journalism even when it comes to Biden? Sarah?
Yes. I'm listening to everybody talking about, mental competence. And we've seen it. We've seen it with Donald. They're both old. We've seen it with Donald Trump. We watched him get off a plane and to a waiting car and wander off. We've watched him wander off out of a conference room where he was supposed to sign documents. We've seen it. They're both, in my opinion, not mentally capable of running for office, and yet this is what we are left with. We are left with two senior citizens that, in my opinion, why are we not having presidents in their 40s and 50s?
Well,
I'm 40.
Well, Sarah, why
Listen,
don't you just vote for Robert Kennedy or
Oh, God.
Okay.
Andrew Yang.
There are alternatives. This is a primary.
Andrew Yang,
We're
I'm
not
all
stuck
for
with
Andrew
them.
Yang.
Andrew Yang.
And I just wanted to say to Sarah, Sarah, listen, I remember those images, right, of Trump seeming to be wandered off. But you have to remember, Trump wasn't a statesman, right? Those surroundings were new to him, and yes,
we can't have this conversation unless we are being very, very honest. We know that they are both, that there are some mental limitations.
Well, it's not even that. It's not even the competence.
I disagree with you, Sarah, because we
the issues that matter today, the pressing issues like AI. I mean,
I would agree with
well,
Ian
Sarah,
on that.
let's see.
Guys, like 3 people are talking. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. I would agree with you, Ian. There are things that are happening today, and like you said with AI, I'm not that old, but I don't understand it. How could Biden understand that? How could Trump understand the needs of today and how technology is changing? And I'll reference, remember when they had Facebook and Twitter execs before Congress, and suddenly you saw like somebody's grandpa asking questions about their own Twitter accounts. It was laughable. I think there could be a whole conversation had about what is too old to run for office. But then again, that would be considered ageism, right? And I'll let you go here in a second. I'm 48 years old, and when I noticed it in my 40s that I was starting to decline. I spent 20 minutes looking for my glasses, which were on my head. We all know it, Benjamin. We all know that as we age, our mental acuity is not what it is. Now, I couldn't find my glasses for 20 minutes on my head. Could I still do my job? Yes.
No, I agree with you, right? I mean, but I think there is a difference, though, between being able to do your job and then having to have the Easter Bunny point you which direction to go to, right? So one thing about Trump, you saw his interactions, right, with the press. Whether you liked his answers or did not like his answers, I tend to not like them. He was able to engage them and respond, right? And look, we'll see with this interview tonight, right? Let's see this interview with Caitlin Collins, and we'll see how sharp his faculties are. Then I would like to see an interview with Joe Biden that's of similar format. So, and again, you were right, because I'm not that old either, but because you can't find your glasses doesn't mean that you're not able to do your job by any means. However, if you're starting to have cognitive decline, you may have your driver's license taken away from you, right? If it's severe. So at the same time, you have to say, somebody who I believe has severe maybe cognitive issues, do you really want that person either running the country or figuratively running the country, right? It's a bad image in my mind.
Yeah, and Biden has said that
It has nothing to do with that. So just two seconds, sorry, Joe, to interrupt you. By the way, congratulations on your new teeth, Joe. Trash, you're there. You've got the stream ready. It starts in a couple of minutes.
I'm here. I'm ready.
Yeah, I've got to run, guys. Thanks for the great chat as always.
Cool. Guys, just anyone that has to jump off, just jump off, guys. Don't get to say bye.
Mario,
Logic,
are you
much
guys
love.
just
Thanks a lot.
streaming?
It's not an airport.
Are you streaming?
Hold on, Sarah. What?
Are you going to?
We will stream it here. Yes. Yes. Trash. All good. Is all ready.
Yep, ready to go, man. I'm here. I'm set up.
Cool. All right. Let me know when it starts. You can just interrupt us and start streaming it as soon as it starts. Okay. I think it's just a few minutes away.
Can I ask Sarah a question?
Well,
Does it matter?
it starts in like 1 minute, so.
So, real quick question.
Yeah,
Does it
all good.
matter
We'll
to-
just interrupt you guys when it starts. All good.
Does it concern you at all that Biden has already said he will not debate other Democratic candidates?
Absolutely. I'll answer that. Absolutely, it does.
And isn't that a sign of his
Looking for a
cognitive
way out,
decline?
is what I'm
Isn't that a
saying. And you hear that from
confirmation?
I wouldn't say
Isn't
that
that
that's
possible,
Well,
Brian?
it's the norm, though. It's the norm.
I wouldn't say that.
No, it's
I
not.
wouldn't say that is.
Yeah, it is. For an incumbent.
No,
it's
it's
the
not. There have always been presidential debates. The candidates from both parties have always participated.
Did Trump?
So Doc, to your point, Doc, does it concern you that RFK is still going on about chemtrails?
Well, I like Kennedy for a couple reasons, but I'm not going to vote for him. But I admire the fact that he's running, given the history of his family. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I agree with his concerns about the deep state, and I agree with his concerns about the vaccine and the way that was pushed on us. Those two things make him a more credible candidate, in my opinion, for the Democrats. I think he would be more competitive with Trump, who I assume is going to win the Republican nomination. So, yeah.
Let me go to Brian. Brian, what were you saying? How was it different? How was it different, please?
Yeah. So typically, there's no inter-party debates for an incumbent. Trump didn't do it last time. Obama didn't do it. If somebody runs against the incumbent, there usually is not a debate. It's not all the time, but usually within the party there isn't a debate. So, but that doesn't mean I don't want him to debate. I think he should. I think everybody should. But typically, that's not the way it works.
So, Doc, question to you then, based on what Brian said: if Trump didn't do it, why do you want Biden to do it?
Well, I don't think anybody was actively running against Trump as an incumbent. Kennedy clearly is. So is Martina. Whatever. There are other candidates, and there should be other candidates for the Democrats. Just given the conversation in this room. I mean, Ben certainly isn't a MAGA Republican, and listen to what he's saying. I haven't heard from Kim, but I bet Kim thinks that it should be a debate as well. The reason you do debates is to expose sort of cognitive decline.
Absolutely, Doc. And you know I'm not a MAGA Republican. I'm more on the DeSantis camp. But no, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. They're important, right? They're important not so much for the voters that will vote for their party and candidate regardless. You know, they have somebody picked out already, but it is for the undecided voters. And they're important questions that need to be asked. And you're able to gauge a lot by how that potential leader would act, not only domestic stage, but the world stage. Of course they're important.
Yeah,
Totally agree with you.
Trump's being introduced on stage right now.
Yeah,
we'll be streaming it.
You're ready to start playing.
Yeah, he'll be starting playing in a minute. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah.
Actually, give them a Joe. Joe was speaking, so maybe Joe, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, it's just about the poll. Like, if the polls show that someone's a real candidate, like RFK, which I hope does go up in the polls, he already has good numbers for just announcing.
Your 2024 term would look like, what another Trump term would look like. We'll get to the voters shortly, but your polls show that you are dominating the Republican race right now, but you are also under active federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended with a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not publicly acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House?
Because we did fantastically. We got 12 million more votes than we had in, as you know, in 2016. I actually say we did far better in that election.
What can I help?
Got the most that anybody's ever gotten as a sitting president of the United States. I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it, and they saw exactly what everyone else saw. You look, even if you just look recently with the 51 intelligence agents, that made a 16-point difference. If you look at the FBI, if you look at the FBI and Twitter, they call it Twitter files, made a big difference. If you look at
Mr. President, back to what you just said there, though, it was not a rigged election. It was not a stolen election. You and your supporters lost more than 60 court cases on the election. It's been nearly 2.5 years. can you publicly acknowledge that you did lose the 2020 election?
Let me just go on. If you look at True the Vote, they found millions of votes on camera, on government cameras, where they were stuffing ballot boxes. So with all of that, I think it's a shame that what happened. I think it's a very sad thing for our country. I think it's a very sad thing, frankly, for the world, because if you look at what's gone to our country has gone to hell. Our borders are bad. Our military has been bad. You look at the taxes, you look at inflation, what's happened to inflation, it's just destroying our country. We've really become, in many ways, a third world country. And it's very sad what's happened in this administration. And it's something that will turn around on day one. We were energy independent. Now energy is at a level that we've never had to pay before. Nobody can afford to continue to pay what's happening with energy. But we were energy independent. We were getting out of Afghanistan with strength and with dignity. And instead we got out, we looked like fools, probably the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.
We have a lot of questions about the economy and foreign policy tonight, but what you just said there, Republican officials debunked those claims about fraudulent ballots. We want to give you a chance tonight.
Who?
Republican officials in Georgia and every single state. There is no, your own election officials, Mr. President. So we wanted to give you a chance.
People were afraid to take on the issue. But we have a big problem in this country. We have elections that were horrible. If you look at what happened in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, if you look at what happened in Detroit, Michigan, if you look at what happened in Atlanta, millions of votes, and all you have to do is take a look at government cameras. You'll see them. People going to 28 different voting booths to vote, to put in 7 ballots apiece.
But Mr. President, I have to stop you there because there is no evidence of that. Your own election officials testified to that and have said that Republicans in these states did this. In Georgia, there were multiple recounts, including a hand recount. We have questions about the claims that you're making tonight from voters on this topic. I want to bring in Scott Dustin from Concord. He works in insurance litigation. He's an undeclared voter. That's what they call independents here in New Hampshire, as you know. He did vote for you in 2020. Scott, what's your question for the president?
Hi, President Trump. Welcome back to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Will you suspend polarizing talk of election fraud during your run for president?
Will I suspend, excuse me, what?
Will you suspend polarizing talk of election fraud during your run for president?
Yeah, unless I see election fraud. If I see election fraud, I think I have an obligation to say it. And you know what we went through a short while ago has really put our country in a big problem. I hope to do that. I hope we're going to have very honest elections. We should have voter ID. We should have one-day elections. We should have paper ballots instead of these mail-in votes. But the answer is yes, and I hope that it's going to be very straight up, because if it's going to be straight up, we're going to win the election.
So you will suspend talk, to his question, about the 2020 election on the campaign trail?
I guess we're going to just win. We're at a point now. We're getting so close. Let's just win it again and straighten out our country.
One other question on this. When you've talked about the 2020 election results in the past, you once suggested terminating the Constitution. Do you stand by those comments?
No. You were able to do certain things. I'm not talking about terminating the Constitution. I'm talking about cherishing the Constitution. The Constitution says that we're supposed to have legal and well-maintained and well-looked-at elections, and we didn't have that. I cherish our Constitution, but we have to live up to the Constitution. We weren't living up to the Constitution.
I was just saying there's no evidence of that election fraud. You did once tweet.
You're supposed to say that, but I'm glad you say that. But look, that was a horrible election. That was a horrible election, and unless somebody's very stupid, and I know you very well, you're not stupid at all, but you perhaps are given an agenda or you have an agenda. Look, we have to have honest elections in our country. We have open borders. You look at what's happening. I mean, we have elections, we have open borders. Look at what's happening on our southern border. Millions and millions of people are coming here. They're being released from prisons. They're being released from mental institutions. And we have millions of people pouring into our country. And now they're getting rid of Title 42, which I put on, which kept people out that were sick and
Mr. President, we have a lot of questions about immigration to get to tonight. Obviously, that's a big topic, especially given what's expected to happen tomorrow. But I want to talk about the influence you have over your voters. It's very clear that you are very influential over them. You have a lot of impact. I've been to many of your rallies and seen it up close, which raised a lot of questions about the influence that we saw that you had on them on January 6th and your supporters when they attacked the Capitol. Do you have any regrets about your actions on January 6th?
Well, you know, January 6th was, again, we go back to it, but January 6th had to do with the fact that hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't see the pictures very often. A lot of the people here probably were there. January 6th, it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. That was prior to the walk down to the Capitol building. I don't think, and I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. I've never spoken to a crowd as large as this. And that was because they thought the election was rigged. And they were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day. And what I was asked to do, I wasn't involved in it very much. I was asked to come in, would I make a speech? I made a speech. I said, walk peacefully and patriotically, you know, many different things. In fact, I brought a list of things. I don't want to bore the audience, but we can go sentence after sentence after sentence of things I said and things I put out. One of the big problems was that Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy as I affectionately call her, Crazy Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington were in charge, as you know, of security. And they did not do their job.
They're not in charge of the National Guard. You're in charge of the
National
National Guard.
Well, I offered them National Guard. I said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want. And they turned me down.
Your
And in
acting
fact, she
defense
turned me down.
secretary-
She turned me down in writing. They turned me down.
But your acting defense secretary, Chris Miller, at the time, he says you never gave a formal order to deploy the National Guard. But when it came to that day,
just the opposite.
He
Chris Miller wrote a book, and he's a fantastic guy, and he was ready to go. They turned him down. If you look, the mayor of Washington, D.C., lovely lady, she said, we don't want it. We don't like the look. Nancy Pelosi said, oh, we don't like the look. If they would have had I offered them 10,000 soldiers. I said, it could be 10, it could be more, but I offered them specifically 10,000 soldiers. If they would have taken 500 soldiers, you wouldn't have had the problem. They turned it down. And if you look at the Inspector General report, he says they turned it down. They made a terrible mistake.
well, Chris Miller was your acting defense secretary. He says you never gave that order. But back to what happened on that day.
He
You said
did
you
not
weren't.
say that.
He has testified that, Mr.
He did
President.
not say that.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about
True,
that
of
speech
course.
that happened on the rally.
Am I
So
allowed
when
to
they,
say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. So if you look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth, and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No,
Once
no,
it was
but you
clear,
didn't report that. You know why? Because it was
we
taken
did report
down.
it. I was reporting that
It was
day.
taken down and it wasn't.
But when
put
it was
back up.
clear to you that they were not being peaceful, you saw them rushing the Capitol, breaking windows. They were hitting officers with flagpoles, tasing them, beating them up. When it was clear they weren't being peaceful, why did you wait 3 hours to tell them to leave the Capitol? They listened to you like no one else. You know that.
They do. I agree with that. But
So why didn't you tell them to go home sooner?
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor are in charge. I assume they were able to do their job. They weren't.
But
And it
Pelosi's
kicked
not in charge of Capitol
And if you
security.
remember, I made a video right outside the Oval Office in the Rose Garden, and I'm very proud of that video. I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in
But what
there
time,
right now.
the video, it came out much later after they had already attacked the Capitol.
It was a great video, and it was a beautiful video. And it said, I mean, I don't want to read it all, but you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people of law and order. We love the people of law and order. We can't play into the hands of these other people. We have to have peace. Please go home. No, I said that.
referring
You know
to
what
the
they
law and
did?
order there,
They took
Mr.
that
President.
down, and you know, to this
Can I help
day,
you?
it hasn't been put up. And the reason is
Very well.
it's so good and so conclusive that all of this nonsense and all of the tens of millions of dollars that have been spent are just wiped away with this one. And they've never put it back up. They had another one that they did the same
But that
thing.
video that you referenced there, it wasn't posted until 4:17 p.m.
No, I'll tell
they
you,
breached
it
the Capitol at 2 p.m.
That video was
Mr. President.
posted,
4:17
yeah,
p.m.
before, actually a little bit before that.
Right, so that's my question.
Excuse me.
Because in that 3 hours, over
Excuse me,
140
it was
officers
posted
were
after the
injured.
first one I just read, though, and that was at 2 o'clock.
But I think the reason the timeline is so critical here, because going back to your influence, in
Here's
that
another
3
one I
hours,
posted.
over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
You know what? She was killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her. At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her. And she was a good person. She was a patriot.
One
There was
person
no
who was
reason
there-
there was no reason. And he went on television to brag about the fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging about the fact that he
Oh,
killed
he
her.
was
But one
bragging.
person who was at the
He was
Capitol that day,
bragging.
as you know, was your vice president, Mike Pence, who says that you endangered his life on that day.
I don't
Do
think
you
he was in
feel-
any danger.
Mr. President, do you feel that you owe him an apology?
No, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislatures, and I think we would have had a different outcome. I really do.
But he doesn't have the authority to do that, as you know.
What?
The vice president does not have the authority to
Okay,
reject
are you ready?
those
Let's have
election
this one out
results.
just now, because it's interesting. Let's keep it interesting, right? I like Mike Pence very much. He's a very fine man. He's a very nice man. He made a mistake. His lawyer said, you cannot move. I called him the human conveyor belt. I said, even if the votes, I talked to his lawyer, even if the votes are absolutely fraudulent, he can't say, yes, sir, he can't send back. And the Democrats played it, and the rhinos played it. And then the election was over. They told him he couldn't do it. And Mike said to me, I can't do it. The lawyers told me I can't do it. They can't do it. But the lawyers were wrong, because right after the election, they all met, the rhinos and the Democrats, and they worked out a plan to make sure that future vice presidents don't do what I said you could do.
That's not what happened. You're referring to the Electoral Count Act.
That's
I've read that. There is no authority.
No,
legal
excuse
experts,
me.
including Republican legal experts, say that he does not have that authority, Mr.
Caitlin,
President. But I want
why
to
did
move
they
on.
change the law then, saying that you can't do it?
They didn't change the law. They strengthened the law because they were worried about
Oh, they
presidents
strengthened it,
exploiting.
meaning you could do it.
That's not what it means.
Thank you.
They strengthened the law
Mike
because
had
they
the
were
right to
worried.
do it. They convinced him he didn't, and it was a horrible thing for our country. If you would have sent those votes back to Georgia, Pennsylvania, and other states, Wisconsin, which if you look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted now that the election was rigged. If
They
you
have
would have
not
sent
admitted
those
that,
votes
Mr.
back to
President.
many of those states, they would not come back in the affirmative. And remember what I said, and you just said it pretty much, you admitted what I said was right.
I
They
did
said
not.
he didn't have the right to do it. And he did have the right to do it, and that's why they changed the law, taking that right away.
I should note that your campaign paid for a recount that happened in Wisconsin. It actually had more votes for President Biden by the end of it. But I want to move on to Wayne Beyer. He's a retired attorney from
By the
North
way,
Conway.
so
who
many
is-
illegal votes were cast in Wisconsin, and if you look in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, they had so many illegal votes, they didn't even know what to do with them. You're absolutely wrong
Mr.
about
President,
that.
there weren't any fraudulent votes in Wisconsin. I do want to get to the audience, though. We have questions for you from the audience. Wayne Beyer is a retired attorney from North Conway. He has previously served in Republican administrations. He volunteered for the Republican Party in the 2022 midterms. He voted for you in 2020. What's your question for the President, Wayne?
Thank you for coming, Mr. President.
Thank you, Wayne.
My question to you is, will you pardon the January 6 rioters who were convicted of federal offenses?
I am inclined to pardon many of them. I can't say for every single one, because a couple of them probably they got out of control. But, you know, when you look at Antifa, what they've done to Portland, and if you look at Antifa, look at what they've done to Minneapolis and so many other places. Look at what they did to Seattle and BLM. Many people were killed. These people, I'm not trying to justify anything.
Hello.
But you have two standards of justice in this country. And what they've done, and I love that question, because what they've done to so many people is nothing. And then what they've done to these people, they've persecuted these people. And yeah, my answer is I am most likely, if I get in, I will most likely, I would say it will be a large portion of them. You know, they did a very, and it'll be very early on. And they're living in hell right now.
So when it comes
they're
to
living
pardons,
in hell. And they're policemen, and they're firemen, and they're soldiers, and they're carpenters and electricians, and they're great people. Many of them are just great people.
Mr. President, one of the people who was convicted was a former policeman, but he was convicted of attacking a police officer, I should note. But when you said you are considering pardoning a large portion of those charged with crimes on January 6th, does that include the 4 Proud Boys members who were charged and convicted of seditious conspiracy?
I don't know. I'd have to look at their case, but I will say in Washington, D.C., you cannot get a fair trial. You cannot. Just like in New York City, you can't get a fair trial either.
Speaking of New York, I want to ask you about a significant verdict that was reached yesterday. I know this is something you want to weigh in on as well. A Manhattan jury found that you sexually abused the writer E. Jean Carroll and defamed her. You've denied this, but what do you say to voters who say it disqualifies you from being president?
Well, there aren't too many of them because my poll numbers just came out. They went up. Okay. I think I'm the only person in history who had a charge like that. And usually you leave office, you say, I'm sorry, but I'm going to back home. I'm back home to my family and everything. I'm going to be resigning. My poll numbers went up, and they went up with the other fake charge, too. Because what's happening is they're doing this for election interference. This woman, I don't know her. I never met her. I have no idea who she is. I had a picture taken years ago with her and her husband, nice guy, John Johnson. He was a newscaster, very nice man. She called him an ape. Happens to be African American. Called him an ape. The judge wouldn't allow us to put that in. Her dog or her cat was named Vagina. What can I do? The judge wouldn't allow to put that in. All of these things, but with her, they can put in anything. Access
this
Hollywood.
This was a jury of 9 people who found you liable of sexual abuse. Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into, other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I
think of it.
I know you're recounting what she said, but Mr. President.
Let me just, if I could, because you asked the question.
This was a
just
jury,
so you understand,
though.
if I was walking in at the bar, because I was very famous then, and I owned the Plaza Hotel right next door, and I owned buildings around it, I'm not going into a dressing room of a crowded department store. Then I say, if she was being raped, and by the way, they said she wasn't raped. Okay, that was her charge. It wasn't.
They found that you sexually abused her.
What? Say what? They did. They said he didn't rape her. And
They did
I
not
didn't
say
do
that you
anything else either. You know what? Because I have no idea who the hell she is.
But Mr.
I don't
President,
know who this woman
can I
is.
ask you, given your recounting
I
your
don't know
version?
who, and I tell you this.
But Mr.
Are
President,
you ready?
can I
swear
ask
on
you
my
because-
children, which I'd never do. I have no idea who this woman. This is a fake story, made up story. We had a horrible Clinton-appointed judge. He was horrible. He allowed her to put everything in. He allowed us to put nothing in.
Mr. President,
this is a
you're
fake
recounting your version
story.
of events here right now to the audience. You referenced the trial. You did not go to the trial and actually
That's right.
testify. Do you wish that you had
No,
testified?
it wouldn't have made a difference. This was a rigged deal. This was my lawyer said, sir, you don't have to do it. I actually said, I think I should. It would be respectful. They said, sir, don't do it. This is a fake story, and you don't want to give it credibility. That's why I didn't go.
One thing you did do in this.
And I swear, and I've never done that, and I swear to, I have no idea who the hell, she's a
Mr.
whack
President,
job.
you did not testify in person in this trial. There was a tape deposition of you from October in it. You defended the comments that you made on that Access Hollywood tape about being able to grab women how you want. Do you stand by those comments?
I said if you're famous and rich or whatever I said, but I said if you're a star, you are, and I said, women let you. I didn't say you grab. I said women let. You know, you didn't use that word. But if you look, women let you. Now, they said, will you take that back? I said, look, for a million years, this is the way it's been. I want to be honest. This is the way it's been. I can take it back if you'd like to, but if you're a famous person, if you're a star, and I'm not referring to myself, I'm saying people that are famous, people that are
You were
stars,
asked in the deposition,
people
do you
that are
consider
rich,
yourself to be a star, and
people
you
that are
said yes.
powerful. They tend to do pretty well in a lot of different ways, okay? And you would like me to take that back? I can't take it back because it happens to be true. I said it's been true for 1 million years, approximately a million years, perhaps a little bit longer than that.
So you stand by those comments?
Well, I don't want to lie.
Mr. President, we have a lot of
here's what
questions.
she wants
Mr.
me to say.
President, let's
A
get to
rich
the
and
audience
famous
questions
person
tonight.
has no advantage over anyone else. Well, you do have an advantage, and I say unfortunately, but that's the way it is.
You said fortunately or unfortunately,
Well,
but Mr.
fortunately or
President, we have a lot
unfortunately
of
for
audience
her.
questions to get to tonight. I want to go back to the audience. We've got Danielle Rieger. She works as an oral surgery assistant. She's a Republican activist from Derry. She was a New Hampshire delegate for you in 2020. What's your question?
Hi, thank you so much for coming to New Hampshire to answer our questions. My question is regarding the economy. Over the past 2 years, we have seen the prices for everything skyrocket. From food to gas to utilities and insurance costs, many people's bills are up several $100s a month, including mine. If elected president again, what is the first thing you would do to help bring down the cost to make things more affordable?
Drill, baby, drill. So, we were energy independent. We were soon going to be energy dominant. And nobody had ever done what I did. We got oil down to $1.87. Actually, it fell lower than that in some cases. We had to save the oil companies. The price was getting so. We were doing incredibly. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country, probably the greatest economy in the history of the world. We were energy independent, soon to be energy dominant. We were going to be bigger than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together ×2. We have more liquid gold under our feet than any other nation, And these stupid fools ended it. And energy went from $1.87 and even lower for gasoline, for a car. They went from $1.87 to $5, $6, $7, $8, and even $9. And your electricity bills went through the roof, your heating bills went through the roof. And that's what started inflation. And it hasn't stopped because people are paying now for bacon and for eggs and for the 2 and 3 times what it was just a little while ago. We created the greatest economy in history. A big part of that economy was got you the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, bigger than the Reagan cuts, bigger than any cut. And also, Caitlin, also, as you know, we got the biggest regulation and regulatory cuts. This place was rocking, and then we were given a gift from China, and China paid a big price. And let me tell you something, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in taxes from China, but prior to COVID coming in, and then I rebuilt the economy again, a second time. But we had, prior to COVID coming in as from China, from Wuhan, which I said it came from Wuhan. Everybody said, oh, you're wrong about that. You're wrong. It came from Wuhan. I said it right from day one. So we had the greatest economy in the world. Here's the story. They made energy so high, and energy is all invasive. It is massive as an industry and as a cost. It lifted everything. If
Mr.
you
President,
made, if you made donuts, if you made, no matter what you did, and we had inflation, the likes of which I guess we haven't had, they said, for 52 years, but I think more than that. We had no inflation. We had the lowest energy prices we've had in decades.
Hey there.
This country was rocking and rolling. And by the way, we had the most secure border in the history of our
Mr.
country.
President, we
and now we
have
have
more questions on the economy. I want to make sure we get to all of those. As you know, the U.S. right now could be just 3 weeks away from defaulting on its debt. That could mean millions of jobs lost, people not getting their Social Security payments. People believe it would put the U.S. economy into a recession. On that topic, I want to bring in Marta Cervella, a student here at St. Anselm. She is an undeclared voter who did not vote in 2020. Marta, what's your question?
Hi, Mr. President.
Hi, thank you.
So my question is, what do you think about the United States' current debt situation, and how can we move forward?
Such an important question. So we're at $33 trillion, a number that nobody ever thought possible. When we had our economy rocking and rolling just prior to COVID coming in, like literally, we were making a fortune. And oil, we were going to make so much money from oil, we were going to start paying off debt. But then with COVID coming in, we had to do other things. We had to keep this country alive because it was so serious. But we have to get the country back. We have to lower energy prices. We have to lower interest rates. Interest rates are through the roof. Energy has to come down. It all has to come down, and we have to start paying off debt. But when we have a debt limit, and they use that very seriously. They came in, Schumer came in with Nancy Pelosi, and they were using it. We'll violate it. We'll do whatever. They talked a whole lot different than they do right now. I say to the Republicans out there, congressmen, senators, if they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default. And I don't believe they're going to do a default because I think the Democrats will absolutely cave because you don't want to have that happen. But it's better than what we're doing right now because we're spending money like drunken sailors.
So just to be clear, Mr. President, you think the U.S. should default if the White House does not agree to the spending cuts Republicans
well,
are
you
demanding?
might as well do it now because you'll do it later. Because we have to save this country. Our country is dying. Our country is being destroyed by stupid people, by very stupid people.
You once said that using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge just could not happen. You said that when you were in the Oval Office.
That's when I was president.
So why is it different now that you're out of office?
Because now I'm not president.
The U.S. defaulting would be massively
Well, you
consequential
don't know.
for everyone in this room, for all
You
Americans.
don't know. It's psychological. It's really psychological more than anything else. And it could be very bad. It could be maybe nothing. Maybe it's you have a bad week or a bad day. But look, you have to cut your costs. We're spending $7 trillion on, much of it on nonsense. $7 trillion on nonsense.
We've got
And
another
I actually
question from
said,
a voter tonight.
get all of that money that was wasted, and frankly, the Senate should have never approved it. Get all that money that was wasted, and if they don't get rid of that, you'll have to default. Okay?
Mr.
You'll have to
President,
default.
we've got another voter here tonight.
And by the way, you're going to default eventually anyway, but it's going to be much messier. I don't think you'll have to default. I think if the Republicans hold strong and they say we want let's say we want $5 trillion off, I really think the Democrats have no choice but to do it. And if I win, they're going to be doing the same thing to me in 2 years. I guarantee you that.
Mr. President,
they're
we've
going to
got
play a
another
very
voter
hard
here
ball game,
tonight.
and they did that before.
Bobby Petrino has been waiting very patiently.
Sure.
He's a student at St. Anselm. He's a member of College Republicans. He's an undeclared voter right now. He supported you in 2020. Bobby, what's your question for President Trump?
Hi, thank you for coming. This is a bit of a pivot, but with gun violence and mass shootings in the news cycle recently, I'm worried that state governments and the federal government are going to act to repress gun rights. Under your administration, you instructed the Department of Justice and the ATF to ban bump stocks. If elected president again, how would you act not only to defend our Second Amendment rights, but to restore rights that have been taken from us, such as, by example, recently the ATF's ruling on the pistol stabilizing braces?
Yeah, as you know, the bump stocks are actually a very unimportant thing. And NRA, I went with them, and they said it doesn't mean anything. Or actually, all they do is teach you how to shoot very inaccurately. So we did that. There's been nobody that's protected the Second Amendment, as you know, like I have. I protected it through thick and thin, not easy to do. But we have a very big mental health problem in this country. And again, it's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person that pulls the trigger. And we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect our Second Amendment.
Mr. President, you dealt with a lot of mass shootings when you were in office. This year, there have already been more than 200 mass shootings in 2023. If you are reelected, are there any new gun restrictions that you would sign into law?
I would do numerous things. For instance, schools, we would harden, very much harden. And I'm a very believer. I believe in teachers. I love teachers. I think they're incredible. And they love the children, not quite like the parents, but they love the children in many cases almost as much. Many of these teachers are soldiers, ex-policemen. They're people that really understand weapons. And you don't need 5% of the teachers would be more than you could ever have if you're going to hire security guards. But in addition to that, have security guards. You have to harden your entrances. You have to make schools safe. And you can make other places safe. But it is a big mental health problem in this country more than anything else. And remember, we have 700 million guns. 700 million. Many people, if they don't have a gun, they're not going to be very safe. I mean, if they don't have a gun, it gives them security. Now, you need them for entertainment. You need them for hunting. You need them for a lot of different things. But there are people that if they didn't have the privilege of having a gun in some form, many of them would not be alive today. You know, there is a certain country that had a very strict policy on guns, very, very strict.
Which country?
And, Brazil, okay. Brazil, very strict. And the former president of Brazil, and the killing was incredible. They were walking into people's homes and killing people. They had no protection. He said, go out and buy guns. People went out and bought guns, and it went way down. The numbers went way down because they had security. If you look at Chicago, Chicago has the single toughest gun policies in the nation. They are so tough you can't breathe. New York, too, and other places also. All of those places are the worst and most dangerous places. So that's not the answer.
No new restrictions that you would sign if reelected, Mr. President. I want you to meet Julie Miles, a registered nurse from Merrimack. She's a Republican who voted for you in 2020. Julie, what's your question for the president?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I appreciate you answering this question this evening. How do you plan to appeal to women voters in New Hampshire who are concerned about the Dobbs decision and how states may change their laws?
It's such a great question, and it was such a great victory, and people are starting to understand it now. You know that they wanted to bring it back to the states, but that was probably the least important part of that victory. Getting rid of Roe v. Wade was an incredible thing for pro-life because it gave pro-life something to negotiate with. Pro-life had absolutely nothing being stuck in Roe v. Wade to negotiate with. And now what's happening, and I see it all over, deals are being made, deals are going to be made, and look, everybody that was president wanted to get rid and tried to get rid of Roe v. Wade.
You mean
for 50 years, Republicans. For 50 years, this has been going on. Actually, a couple of Democrats too. But for 50 years, this has been going on. I was able to do it, and I was very honored to do it. But by doing it, things are happening that are very, very positive. And I happen to believe in the exceptions, the life of the mother, rape, incest, like Ronald Reagan believed in the exceptions. But I happen to believe that. I think it's frankly important to do that, but a lot of people are, against that. A relatively small number. But the way I look, I think it's very important to say this. I consider the other side to be radical, because the other side, under Roe v. Wade and other things, the other side, they're radical because they will. Remember the debate with Hillary Clinton? I said, rip the baby out of the womb at the end of the 9th month. They will kill the baby in the 9th month. If you look at that crazy governor of Virginia from the former governor, where he said, no, the baby will be born, and then we'll decide essentially whether or not to execute the baby.
But, Mr. President, can we talk about what you would do if
these are the radical people. It's not the pro-life people that are radical.
But if you are reelected and you're back in the Oval Office and you get legislation to your desk, would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
What I'll do is negotiate so that people are happy. But the fact that I was able, I'm so proud of it. We put 3 great justices on the Supreme Court. We have almost 300 federal judges on the Supreme Court.
So just to be clear, Mr. President, you would sign a federal abortion ban into law.
I said this. I want to do what's right, and we're looking, and we want to do what's right for everybody.
But what's right?
But now, for the first time, the people that are pro-life have negotiating capability, because you didn't have it before. They could kill the baby in the 9th month or after the baby was born. Now they won't be able to do that.
But I think this is a really important question for you to answer, because this is something every Republican, including those who are running against you for the nomination, are being asked about, is would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
And many of them are going to give you the same answer as I am. First of all, I am honored to have done what I did. And a lot of people said in 150 years, he's now the most consequential president because he saved so many lives. And I'm honored to have done it. And because of what I've done, we now have a great negotiating ability. That's what I do in life. I negotiate. We have a great negotiating ability, and I think we're going to be able to get
But what do you
something
mean
done.
negotiating ability? Because the question that Republicans have, and some of your allies on Capitol Hill say that they want to introduce legislation when it comes to banning abortion. If they send it to your desk, would you sign it?
Some people are at 6 weeks. Some people are at 3 weeks,
Where's
2
President
weeks.
Trump?
President Trump is going to make a determination what he thinks is great for the country and what's fair for the country. But the fact that I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade after 50 years of trying, they worked for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. They worked, and I was so honored to have done it. We are in a very good negotiating position right now, only because of what I was able to do. And remember this, again, you talk about radicalism. People that will kill a baby in the 9th month or the 8th month or the 7th month or after the baby is born, they're the radicals, not the pro-life
I just want to
people.
give you one more chance, though, because you did not answer whether or not you'd sign a federal abortion ban or how many weeks into pregnancy you believe abortion should be banned.
Yeah, but I've
Can you
given
answer
you,
either
I've
of those
given you
tonight?
the answer probably 4 times already.
Which one
I'm
is it,
looking,
though?
I'm
You haven't
looking at a solution that's going to work. Very complex issue for the country. You have people on both sides of an issue, but we are now in a very strong position. Pro-life people are in a strong position to make a deal that's going to be good and going to be satisfactory for them. If you weren't able to get rid of, you wouldn't be having a discussion, if you weren't able to get rid of Roe v. Wade, which put pro-life in a dead position, a horrible position. They could kill the baby at any time they wanted to, but we did something that nobody thought was doable. And other Republican presidents, and others, by the way, they wanted to get it out. They also wanted to bring it back to the states, but bringing it back to the states is a less important issue
But that's why
than
it's
the
the
issue that
question
we
about
just
a
talked
federal
about.
abortion ban. You did not say yes or no to
It
that. You did not say how many weeks.
depends what the deal is. Lindsey Graham's
You did not
a
say
good
how many
man.
weeks.
He's got an idea, and a lot of other people have an idea. And I look at all the
And
different
a lot of people
ideas,
will
and
be curious what
I'll
your
make the right
idea is
decision.
on that. President Trump, we've got more questions to come for you tonight. We'll
make
be
the right
right back
decision for the
in just a moment.
Living with plaque psoriasis, Otezla is a pill that can help you achieve clearer skin with no routine blood tests required. And doctors have been prescribing Otezla for over 8 years. Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Serious allergic reactions can happen. Otezla may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Some people taking Otezla had depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur. Ask your doctor about Otezla today.
Would you be interested in having an affair? You need to be careful.
Y'all better buckle up.
I love Made In. I love what Made In represents.
You would think a pan is a pan until Made In came along, and I went, wow, these things are something better.
I love that I can trust Made In. Very rarely do you find cookware that can both be used in the home and professionally.
Those are the pans that we use at Alinea. We're going to have the best pans in the world at one of the best restaurants in the world.
LA's got themselves the perfect patsies.
They aren't killers.
We've got to figure out what's going on out there.
You feeling lucky?
This trial is putting the city on edge.
Murder. Lying. Blackmail.
Start telling me the truth. Who's really behind this?
Next time on The Whole Story, what happened to San Francisco?
There are no rules, there are no consequences.
You don't choose to be homeless.
It has been hard. It's been frustrating. It doesn't mean you give up.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 8 on CNN. Every weekday,
so many questions still need to be answered here.
we're bringing you the news
A major bomb strike in Russia.
in a whole new way.
A fight over the Trump indictment is escalating.
CNN News Central, weekdays at 1 Eastern on CNN.
Nazareth is absolutely firing.
There's so much power, so much energy from the surfers.
And that all leads up to one breaking point.
For me, surfing is a religion. The
fear, the love, the stress.
Sometimes I feel like it's too much.
We put everything on the line. We only get one shot.
Don't do it. Don't ruin this moment, please. I really love you. Joel?
There really is something to be said for going it alone.
Anyway?
Families aren't easy. Not even the fun ones. It takes a lot of work.
Sunday nights, we're trying something a little different. One whole story, one whole hour. The world's best journalists dig deeper into the stories they can't ignore.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 8 on CNN.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
The like button was a mark of genius.
I am running for President of the United States.
It was a moment that said, we have to tell our stories.
The 2010s, new episodes, Sundays at 9 on CNN.
I'm Chris Wallace, and